Chapter 41. Fei Yuzhen was afraid of alerting the enemy, so he deliberately went in along the outermost part of the village. The girl's home was at the other end of Yulin village. It was a somewhat dilapidated wooden house, standing quietly 100 meters away from the sea, as if it had been forgotten by the years. Eroded by the sea breeze for many years, its outer wall had peeled off, revealing the wooden structure inside, which looked particularly vicissitudes and desolate. The layout of this wooden house was very strange, and it was a few hundred meters away from the village, as if it did not belong here. Fei Yuzhen glanced at the holy blade in the sky, and said meanly, "Blade, you are not following the girl here, are you? Otherwise, how do you know she lives here?" The holy blade rolled his eyes at Fei Yuzhen, and said with a hint of anger in his cold tone, "My lifesaver, I'm just going to take a look, you useless master." Fei Yuzhen did not refute, a meal of kindness really needs to be repaid. Suddenly, a strange idea flashed through his mind. Yi Yang is here, can we match them up? He. Yi Yang, do you want a wife or not? Fei Yuzhen was very excited when he thought of Yi Yang's expression at that time. Looking at his master's rolling eyes, Shen Gren was extremely disgusted. This guy must have been holding back his fart and was thinking about causing trouble again. After a while, Shen Gren stopped on the roof of the wooden house, and Fei Yuzhen squatted under the window, like a thief. But squatting under someone's eaves like this did feel like stealing. But there was one thing he cared about, that is, there was still a fire in the house. It was very unreasonable to not sleep so late in this era without smartphones and the internet. Just look at the village in the distance and you will know that there is no light in the house. Sanlang, look at what she is doing. Fei Yuzhen poked the old crow who was dozing on his shoulder and whispered. "Ah! What's wrong? Is there a ghost?" Quan Saburo asked 3 questions in a daze. The most important thing was that its voice was about to poke the sky. Fei Yuzhen hurriedly covered its mouth, but it was too late. The little girl carefully poked her head out and saw Fei Yuzhen. She frowned tightly. After all, anyone would be scared to find a stranger squatting outside the window in the middle of the night. After seeing who was coming, she spoke faintly and said puzzledly, "Mr. Traveler, if you are hungry, please knock on the door. This will scare people to death." The little girl pouted and retracted her head. Soon, the door opened. She looked at Fei Yuzhen and found the crow on his shoulder and the knife on his waist. She immediately asked vigilantly, "Mr. Traveler, what do you want to do? Didn't I say, stay away from this village?" Fei Yuzhen scratched his head awkwardly and glanced at Quan Saburo with resentment. The old crow really pitted his teammates. "Well, I want to ask you about someone." He stood up and said with a smile. Anyway, he was discovered, so it was better to tell the truth. "It's a guy who looks like he deserves a beating. He's about my age, a man." Feeling that the description was not so accurate, he continued to add, "It's the guy who smashed the shrine in your village. I'm his friend." Who knew that Fei Yuzhen had just finished speaking when there was a loud bang. The little girl closed the door and an unhappy voice came from inside the house. "Mr. Traveler, I haven't seen the friend you mentioned, and I don't know how the shrine was broken. Please leave my house immediately." The little girl's words were excited, and anyone who was not stupid could hear what she knew. Alas! Fei Yuzhen sighed. Why did this girl become a different person when she mentioned the matter of Yi Yang and the shrine? She was deliberately covering up something. Before he could continue to ask, the door opened again. This time, the little girl came out with a kitchen knife. She rolled her eyes at Fei Yuzhen and said, "I don't want to fight. Please leave my house quickly." Fei Yuzhen was completely dumbfounded when she saw this, because the little girl put the knife on her neck. Okay. Fei Yuzhen backed away and comforted the other party, "I'll leave right away. Put the knife away. It's dangerous. Children playing with knives will wet the bed at night. Go quickly, don't try to threaten me with force. I know you guys know some kung fu." The little girl regretted it after she said it. Doesn't this mean that she has admitted in disguise that she has seen people like Fei Yuzhen? She blushed and urged, "I'll count to 3 seconds. If you don't leave, I'll die and then you will indirectly kill a life." Hearing this, Fei Yuzhen turned and ran, and disappeared in the village in the blink of an eye. "Ah!" The little girl sighed, closed the door helplessly, and muttered, "Why don't you listen one by one?" It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and people had already fallen asleep. Fei Yuzhen lay on the beach, observing the small wooden house on the beach with a telescope. As expected, the door of the wooden house opened, and the little girl, carrying a fish basket, closed the door quietly. After looking around vigilantly, she walked quickly towards the cliff on the other side of the village. Fei Yuzhen saw that the other party was far away, and hurriedly followed. The other party really knew where Yi Yang was imprisoned. Following all the way, Fei Yuzhen followed into a small forest. Among the lush branches, a dilapidated temple with a faint light could be seen faintly. In front of the dilapidated temple sat two adult men sleeping soundly, who seemed to be villagers of Yulin village. The little girl quietly pushed open the door of the dilapidated temple without making any sound. I remember, Yi Yang is there. Seeing the familiar place, Quan Sanlang suddenly had an idea, and he remembered everything. Fei Yuzhen rolled his eyes at it, and complained helplessly, saying, I know it too. Yes. Before Quan Sanlang could speak, Fei Yuzhen pinched its mouth and signaled it not to speak. The exposure in the wooden house was still fresh in his memory. Please stop using your magic, Master Quan Sanlang. After Fei Yuzhen went around to the ruined temple, he found that it had no windows. He had no choice but to climb onto the roof. The ruined temple was not even as high as Doshan's house, so it was easy to climb up. He moved a tile and looked through the gap. The flickering candlelight reflected two figures. One was Yi Yang, who was tied up like a caterpillar, and the other was the little girl. It can be seen that the villagers were really afraid that Yi Yang would escape. In addition to wrapping him with hemp ropes, they also tied Yi Yang's hands and feet with chains. The little girl emphasized again and again that Yi Yang should not make a sound. When she saw him not in agreement, she took off the hemp cloth stuffed in Yi Yang's mouth. Let me out, there are ghosts in the village. Yi Yang did not shout loudly, but said calmly. He did not look like a kidnapped person at all. Also, I only smashed one shrine, the rest are not mine. Before Yi Yang finished, the little girl put her index finger on his lips and said with guilt, I know it's not you, but please eat well. When I steal the key to the chain, I will let you out. Yi Yang nodded, the little girl smiled, and then took out the rice ball and water from the fish basket. She put the rice ball to Yi Yang's mouth and said something involuntarily. Be good, open your mouth, ah. Yi Yang bit it expressionlessly. The other party was right. He had to fill his stomach, otherwise he would not have the energy to kill the ghost. When he got out, he must find the ghost. Chapter 42. The little girl fed Yi Yang food and water, her movements were very gentle, her eyes were particularly gentle, and she would wipe his mouth attentively, which reminded Yi Yang of his sister. His parents passed away early, and his sister also took care of him in this way when he was a child. After I let you go, don't come back. Yulin village is very dangerous. Even if you can use a knife, it's useless. Also, can you please remember my name? Anyway, I'm going to die. If I can be remembered by people outside the village, it means that I have seen the outside world. The little girl raised her head slightly, her eyes full of expectation, and she looked straight at Tomioka Yi Yang. In her clear eyes, there was no fear of death, on the contrary, there was a faint sense of relief. Hearing this, Yi Yang was touched. Does this count as going out for a walk? But on second thought, he felt something was wrong, so he asked naively, why do you want to die? Do you have a terminal illness? I know a friend whose blood can cure all diseases. You can try it if you have a chance. Hearing this, the little girl burst out laughing. She thought the boy was a little silly, but definitely a gentle person. Thank you then. By the way, my name is Anxia Tsuneko. Anxia smiled with curved eyebrows. She was very happy to meet this boy who seemed difficult to get along with. Remember my name. I'll let you go tomorrow night. Knowing the other person's name, Yi Yang was silent. He lowered his head, clenched his hands into fists, his body trembled slightly, and his breathing became heavy. Every breath was accompanied by a deep sigh. The heart that had always been calm was filled with waves. He thought he had let it go, but Tsuneko was also the name of his deceased sister. Fei Yuzhen, who was eavesdropping on the roof, was dumbfounded. This little girl's name was actually this. Also, what does Yi Yang think he is? He can cure all diseases? Suddenly, Fei Yuzhen had a flash of inspiration. He clapped his hands and shouted excitedly. Oh! Go! The person who tied the bell must be the one who untied it. The person who tied the bell has come. Listening to Anxia Tsuko's tone, he could basically conclude that the little girl should be related to the ghost in the village. After all, she was ready to die for Yi Yang. Obviously she had seen the horror of the ghost, and thought that a little boy and a knife alone could not deal with the monster. For ordinary people, this idea is normal. So the next thing to do is to wait and see, and the ghost will naturally appear. I am really a genius, please call me Holmes Zhen. He knocked down a tile in excitement, and at the same time attracted the attention of Yi Yang and Tsutsuko. Meow meow meow. In a hurry, Fei Yuzhen imitated the cat's meow vividly, but fortunately he got away with it. Inadvertently, he caught a glimpse of a white ghost in the bushes in the distance. Because he was lying on the roof, the other party did not notice him. He hurriedly lowered his body and tried his best to restrain his breath. Although he could not see clearly, he could judge the appearance by the outline. Fish head and human body. Yi Yang had encountered it, and he had also encountered it. Ghost's clone. Is that guy monitoring the ruined temple? Seeing this, Fei Yuzhen's mouth corners rose, and it seemed that he didn't need to find the hiding lower string through in Xiatsu Tomu. He. Let me see it, it's your bad luck, my promotion indicator. Fei Yuzhen couldn't suppress the corners of his mouth, he didn't believe that the clone would not return to the main body. In this way, the ghost stared at the ruined temple, and Fei Yuzhen stared at the ghost. The mantis stalked the cicada, but the oriole was behind. However, the ghost's next move made Fei Yuzhen dumbfounded. It threw a stone at the door of the ruined temple, with no other purpose, just to wake up the villagers guarding the door. After doing all this, it exploded and turned into a pool of milky white blood. Damn it! It just exploded like this? Isn't it going home to find its mother? The clone exploded, and Fei Yuzhen's plan failed. It was simply the impermanence of life. The villagers guarding the door woke up and saw that the temple door was half open, and stood up in a hurry. Did the boy run away? It shouldn't be. It's better to take a look. After all, there are not many outsiders. It's not easy to catch a sacrifice. Xia Tiazi in the temple panicked. If she was discovered, she would not be able to save Yi Yang. At this moment, the door opened, but it was Fei Yuzhen standing at the door. The two villagers fell asleep peacefully after each of them was attacked from behind. Zhen. Seeing Fei Yuzhen coming, Yi Yang knew that he didn't have to wait until tomorrow night and could leave now. He was very happy. Da. You can make the villagers catch him, you rookie. Fei Yuzhen put the villagers in order and walked into the temple with a swagger. He bowed slightly to the dumbfounded Tsutako and said politely. Miss Angxia Tsutako, I am Tiandao Fei Yuzhen, thank you for your meal. Since you plan to let Yi Yang go, why did you hide it from me? Angxia clenched the corner of her clothes. She didn't expect Mr. Traveler to follow her. She concealed it just for his good. Facing such a monster, what's the use of one or two? You can't let them die. You guys go. Without much explanation, she ran out of the ruined temple without looking back. Fei Yuzhen didn't stop him. After all, everyone has their own difficulties. All he can do is kill the ghost. Zhen, untie me. Looking at Angxia Tsutako who ran out, Yi Yang still looked calm and said lightly. Wait for me. Fei Yuzhen drew out his knife and only cut the rope without touching the chains. And the chains? Yi Yang looked at Fei Yuzhen in confusion. It was not difficult for them to cut the chains. No, the ghost is too cautious. It refuses to show up. We must go find it. Fei Yuzhen spoke slowly and shared what he saw and heard with Yi Yang. After listening, Yi Yang nodded and said, so, the fish-headed human body is indeed a clone. He looked at Fei Yuzhen and asked, what should we do next? Wait and see. Fei Yuzhen picked up the hemp rope on the ground and walked towards Yi Yang with a smile. What are you doing? Restore the scene. Don't worry, my technique is very good. You can break free when the time comes. You are in the dark, that's all. Okay. Yi Yang nodded, and soon, he was tied up like a caterpillar again, but this time he held the knot in his hand and pulled it open. The girl will come to save you tomorrow night, remember to tell her about our plan. After handling the scene, Fei Yuzhen walked out of the ruined temple and said, I'm going to find a knife for you, you idiot. As soon as he took a step, he turned back and leaned into Yi Yang's ear to tell him a few words. Isn't this too bad? Fei Yuzhen patted Yi Yang on the shoulder and said nonchalantly, it's a small problem, I don't care about that. Well, do whatever you want. Before closing the temple door, he stared at Yi Yang with a gossipy look on his face and asked with a smile. What do you think of that girl? Yi Yang was stunned for a moment, slowly opened his mouth, and said. She is a good person, very gentle. Chapter 43. The next day, Fei Yuzhen changed his clothes, carrying a fish basket on his back. With his realistic acting skills, he integrated into the villagers in less than half a day. His identity was simple, a fishmonger in the town. No one in Yulin village doubted him, after all, the villagers made a living by fishing. He strolled around the village when he had nothing to do, under the pretext of looking for a good source of goods, but in fact he was looking for Yi Yang's knife and asking for information. Hard work pays off, and he really found a little kid running around with a scabbard. Following the little kid, he came to a house. It was a wooden house located in the center of the village, but the specifications were much larger than other houses. It was probably the village chief's house. There was an old man basking in the sun in the yard, and Fei Yuzhen started to talk to him with a smile. Old man, I'm a fish from outside. Before he finished speaking, the old man glanced at him and uttered a word lightly. Get lost. After failing to strike up a conversation, Fei Yuzhen silently took out a wad of money from his pocket. In the Demon Slayer Corps, there is nothing else to say, that is, there is sufficient funds. He deliberately shook the wad of money in his hand and said regretfully, Alas, it's a pity that my money is gone, I can't spend it. I also heard that the fish catch in this village is very good. The old man took another look and almost fell off the recliner in excitement. In the blink of an eye, the courtyard door opened wide, and the old man said with a warm and flattering expression. Dear guest, please come in, the fish catch in our village, I'm not bragging. The power of money is always so beyond imagination. The old man poured Fei Yuzhen a good tea and complimented him, and the wrinkles on his face were all smiling. I think the young man is very brave and extraordinary, so he must not be the son of an ordinary family, right? Fei Yuzhen nodded. Since the old man likes to imagine, let him imagine it. He stuffed the money into the old man's pocket, waved his hand generously, and said. Village chief, take it, just consider it as making a friend. We can discuss business in the future. The village chief's eyes lit up and he smiled after receiving the money. Fei Yuzhen struck while the iron was hot and asked, Oh. My father likes to collect some swords and the like. I just saw a kid holding a scabbard. As he said that, he took out another stack of money. He didn't need to finish his words. The village chief understood immediately. Anyway, the knife was obtained from the kid who smashed the shrine. He didn't expect it to be able to sell for money. Soon, the village chief came out with a knife in his arms. He handed it to Fei Yuzhen and said, I wonder if the young man is talking about this one. Yet. Fei Yuzhen pushed the money over and put away Yi Yang's knife. By the way, I want to ask you about someone, Angzia Taizi. I was given a meal by a friend, and I want to return the favor. Hearing this, the village chief's frown relaxed, and he told some stories about Taizi. Originally, Angzia's family was quite happy, but unfortunately her parents disappeared mysteriously 5 years ago. The child was still young, and everyone felt sorry for her, so they usually took care of her. She grew up eating at many people's homes. As he spoke, the village chief sighed, and Fei Yuzhen felt that he didn't want to act out that kind of pity. Hearing what the village chief said, the villagers treated her well. Then why was there a sacrifice? The girl was still hiding something. Fei Yuzhen didn't think about it any further. Anyway, the girl was not a bad person. He bragged with the village chief for a while, and the village chief was stunned. In the evening, he left Yulin village, changed back into his team uniform, and waited for the fishing plan to begin. In the early morning, Angzia Tsunzi set out for the ruined temple. She had secretly taken a look during the day and found Yi Yang was still locked inside. Now she realized that with such a thick iron chain, how could they open it without a key? She shouldn't have run away in a hurry yesterday. Watching Angzia Tsunzi enter the ruined temple, Fei Yuzhen went to the village chief's house to report the news. Of course, he did not show up. In this way, the villagers caught Angzia Tsunzi releasing people. In order to avoid more trouble, they had to send sacrifices in advance. In the ruined temple, Angzia Tsunzi opened the lock of the iron chain. Just as she was about to untie the rope, the temple door opened. A dozen young men holding torches followed the village chief in. They were all strong laborers in the village. Tsunzi, what are you doing? It's ridiculous. The village chief shouted angrily. He waved his hand and signaled the people behind him to pull Tsunzi away. Seeing that the matter was exposed, she protected Yiyang behind her like an old hen protecting her chicks. No, we must let him go today. No one noticed that she had a short knife in her hand. Before everyone could react, she had already put the knife on her neck and threatened. Let him go and let me be the sacrifice. The sacrifice should have been me. In fact, Angziatsunza knew everything. The village chief relied on his prestige to ask the villagers to kidnap outsiders for her. If the outsider dies, he dies. How can I face your parents if you die? Be obedient and put the knife down. Angziatsunza was afraid that the village chief would be so angry. The village chief's tone immediately softened. 5 years ago, a monster appeared in Yulin village. It crushed many villagers with overwhelming force, and finally asked the villagers to send a child as a sacrifice 5 years later. Everyone in Yulin village knew that monsters were not something that could be fought by human power, and they had to send a sacrifice according to its wishes. The monster asked for a child, but the village chief knew very well that no parents would agree to their children to die, so they could only send a child without parents. But Angziatsunza was the only orphan in the entire Yulin village. So, when the village chief could not stand the pressure, Yiyang appeared, and an outsider was enough to resolve the conflict. The villagers hit it off immediately. After all, the one sent out was an outsider. Things have developed to this point. It is really difficult to deal with, but it is actually easy to deal with. Just kill the ghost. But who can believe that the sacrifice they are about to send is specifically for hunting monsters? I'll go, right now. It's a bother. Yiyang's 2 short sentences silenced the tense atmosphere. Everyone at the venue looked at Yiyang in disbelief. After all, to them, Yiyang meant let me go and die. Especially, he said it's a bother very politely. Just then, Yiyang remembered that he forgot to tell Angziatsunza about the plan. For now, it didn't matter. That's going to die, you idiot. Angziatsunza glared at Yiyang and said angrily. I can't die. Yiyang retorted, his tone unquestionable. Well, I'll go with you. Sadako put down her knife and bowed deeply to the village chief. Grandpa village chief, I'm sorry, let me go. If I live, it proves that what he said is true. If I die, this is my fate. Nonsense. He is about the same age as you, how could he beat that monster? Who knew that as soon as the village chief finished speaking, a light blue figure passed by his eyes, and then a scream sounded behind him. The village chief turned around mechanically, and the dozen young men who came with him fell to the ground one after another. Yiyang still had a paralyzed face, and his deep blue eyes were like a bottomless sea. He asked in a steady tone. Old man, what about now, do you believe me? What is happening now is also what Fei Yuchen imagined. He only told Yiyang a way to break the situation. Let others realize your strength. It turns out that this works very well. Chapter 44. You. The village chief was so surprised that he stuttered and couldn't speak for a long time. Angziatsunza was also shocked. What he said was true. No kidding, maybe he can really save the village. Regardless of what they thought, Yiyang picked up the rope on the ground and handed it to the village chief, saying expressionlessly. Please help me tie it up, thank you. Village chief. Soon he realized a serious problem, the brother's knife was sold by himself. Thinking of this, the village chief really wanted to give himself a few big slaps. But, without a knife, how can you fight? The village chief asked with a guilty face. Yiyang was still tying himself up, and he glanced at Satsuko. Help me. Remember to tie a slipknot, so that the ghost can't see it, but I can run at the critical moment. Oh. Satsuko didn't understand why Yiyang was so obsessed with tying himself up. Maybe it was to let the monster relax its vigilance. He had his reasons. In fact, this was Fei Yuzhen's order, and there was no other purpose, just wanting to play a prank. As for the village chief's worry, it was not a problem for Yiyang at all. After tying him up, he glanced at the village chief. My knife must be in my friend's hands now, let's go. Friend? The village chief immediately realized that it was the generous young man in the daytime. It turned out that everything was under his control. Now, whether he believed it or not, he could only do what Yiyang said. So, the team sending the sacrifices set off in a mighty manner, and the destination of the group was a cave 2 kilometers away from the village. The cave entrance was several meters high and dark, and the sea water poured in. There was a humming sound of wind coming from the cave. From a distance, the dark cave seemed like a terrifying big mouth opened, which was creepy. The villagers put the raft prepared in advance into the water at the entrance of the cave, and then lifted him onto the raft according to Yi Yong's instructions. Angxiat Tsutsuko went on the raft by herself. She wanted to go with Yi Yong. "Go down, we don't need you." "I don't want it." Tsutsuko turned her head away and ignored Yi Yong, so Yi Yong said no more. As a wave rushed to the shore, the raft drifted with the waves and was gradually swallowed by the cave. Alas! The village chief sighed. In the end, he still couldn't persuade Tsutsuko, and he still couldn't see the figure of the young man in the daytime. He was unsure. At this moment, Fei Yuchen's voice sounded. If he hadn't shown up on his own initiative, no one would have noticed his arrival. "Village chief, long time no see." When the village chief thought of taking so much money from the young man, he felt that he had no place to put his old face, and he didn't dare to look at him. In fact, what he didn't know was that Fei Yuchen had been there since the ruined temple, and he roughly figured out what happened. It can only be said that kind people have taken the wrong path, and it was forced by the evil ghost. "Don't worry, leave everything to us. Do more good deeds in the future." Fei Yuzhen rushed into the cave along the narrow path without looking back. In the cave, the raft drifted to the depths of the cave with the current, and the torch in Tsutsuko's hand flickered and could go out at any time. In places where the light of the fire could not reach, there were always strange rustling sounds. The damp and cold air was like a mountain, pressing her so hard that she couldn't breathe. Suddenly, a stinky wind blew, and the torch went out. Even though Tsutsuko was shaking with fear, she didn't scream. Then, footsteps appeared in the distance. The only thing that could be confirmed was that the footsteps were getting closer and closer to the raft. "Yi Yong, there is danger." Tsutsuko hurriedly protected Yi Yong with her body. In a panic, she forgot how strong Yi Yong was. At this moment, the footsteps disappeared, and then a bright beam of light appeared out of thin air on the raft, with a head hanging on the beam, and a sinister voice sounded. "Woo woo woo, I'm going to eat you. Do you like Yi Yong?" In an instant, Angxiat Tsutsuko's mind went blank, and she answered unconsciously, not noticing the private goods in her words at all. "Hi." When the words came to her lips, Tsutsuko came back to her senses, because it was Fei Yuchen who was playing a prank. "What?" Tsutsuko blushed, and she wanted to jump into the river and drown immediately. She glared at Fei Yuchen fiercely. Yi Yong heard all the conversation between the two. He untied the knot and took the Nichiren sword without saying a word. Fei Yuchen threw the old-fashioned flashlight prepared in advance to the two, sat next to Yi Yong in a mean manner, and asked in a low voice. "Hey! Did you hear everything?" Yi Yong shook his head, indicating that he didn't understand what you were saying. After a short farce, the raft continued to drift deeper into the cave, and there was no danger during the period. About half an hour later, the raft floated into a wider cave, where the water flowed and gathered into a small lake, with a 20-square-meter island in the center of the lake. The top of the cave is not completely closed but connected to the outside. The moonlight passes through the pit at the top, like a bunch of bright stage lights, illuminating the entire cave. These beams of light fell on the island, and a skinny figure lowered his head, sitting in the middle of the island like an old monk in meditation. It was so thin that only a thin layer of skin was left to wrap around the bones. The ribs on the chest were clearly visible and could pierce the skin at any time. Its body showed a cold silver color. Through the moonlight, 3 lowered heads could be vaguely seen, giving people a weird and uneasy feeling. This is the evil ghost that attacked the villagers and demanded sacrifices 5 years ago. In the past 5 years, it has never stepped out of the cave. It is not that it does not want to, but that it cannot. Sensing the aura of Fei Yuzhen and the others, the head in the middle of the evil ghost stood up like a switchblade, and at the same time, its deep sunken eyes slowly opened. In the grayish-white right eyeball, there was a golden word engraved. Next. He he he. There are 3 sacrifices, I'm really happy. The evil ghost's dry mouth cracked, and the harsh sound penetrated the eardrums of the 3 people, like a sharp knife piercing the brain. Looking at the evil ghost in the distance, Fei Yuzhen's mouth twitched, and he couldn't help cursing. Fraud, pure fraud. You are bullying me because I don't have an anti-fraud app, right? What kind of lower string are you, bastard? He pointed at the confused evil ghost in the distance and cursed for 2 minutes. The ghost was confused, and he felt powerless as if he was being scolded by the food in the pot. Of course, this is not the fault of Fei Yuzhen, because there is a bloody X besides the word Xiao Yi in the evil ghost's eyes, and it has been expelled from the string by the scum boss a long time ago. The scum boss has no other reason, he just simply hates this guy. However, as one of the former lower strings, even if it has not eaten people for 5 years, its strength can still be ranked in the middle and lower levels of the current lower strings. But no matter what, he is not a lower string anymore, this is the fact. Anxia Tsutomu looked at Yi Yang with a blank face and asked weakly. Is your friend always like this? Yi Yang shook his head. He really had never seen or heard of Zhen getting angry. But what is certain is that this ghost must have done something to let Zhen down. It really deserves to die. Chapter 45. Shut up, I will definitely cut you into pieces. Xiaxia's eyes were wide open. He was inexplicably scolded even though he did nothing. He was very angry, especially because that guy deliberately rubbed salt into his wounds. Fei Yuzhen stopped yelling and slapped Xiaxia's butt, mocking him in a mean way. Come on, do you still think you are the 12 ghost moons? His words were not very harmful but extremely insulting, and the steel sickle broke through the defense. Asshole, you are looking for death. It tore its right arm off, but there was no blood gushing out, but a brand new arm quickly grew out, recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. It held the two ends of the torn arm with both hands, and then pulled hard, and the broken arm began to change shape like plasticine. In the blink of an eye, a giant white sickle longer than its body appeared in the hand of the steel sickle. Its eyes were fierce, and its facial features were twisted together. It wanted to fly over and cut Fei Yuzhen into pieces immediately, but there seemed to be an air wall around the island, and it couldn't get out. Suddenly, its other two heads slowly raised up. To people's surprise, they were two kind faces, and they looked like a man and a woman. When Anxia Tsutsuko saw the faces of the two heads clearly, her mind was blank in an instant, and endless sadness surged in her heart. They were her parents who disappeared 5 years ago. Dad! Mom! Her body trembled involuntarily, and tears flowed out of her eyes like a dam bursting, blurring her vision. She ignored the turbulent sea water around her, took a step without hesitation, and walked towards the island. At this moment, she had only one thought in her mind: get closer to her parents, get closer. No. Yi Yang pulled Tsutsuko back. It was a ghost, not her parents. I want to see my mom and dad, don't stop me. Don't stop me. Tsutsuko struggled frantically, she cried loudly. In the past 5 years, she had endured too much loneliness, woke up from sleep countless times, but her parents were not around. But she was just an ordinary person, it was impossible for her to break free from Yi Yang's hands. Tsutsuko! Tsutsuko, run away, never, come back. The mouths of the Anxia couple's heads opened and closed slightly, and an extremely weak voice sounded, although it was intermittent but extremely resolute. Gangjian cursed impatiently, it's been 5 years, why haven't you two's consciousness died yet? I've had enough of death. 5 years ago, it devoured 2 humans, swallowing them whole was its hobby. Who would have thought that the couple's consciousness did not dissipate but instead fought for partial control of the body? In the past 5 years, Gangjian has been fighting against the couple's consciousness, otherwise the villagers of Yulin village 5 years ago would not have had the opportunity to make an agreement with it, because it would massacre the village. But unfortunately, Anxia and his wife's consciousness reached its limit, especially after seeing their daughter, their obsession disappeared, and they could not compete with the evil spirit's consciousness. The couple's love for their daughter trapped a former lower string in place for 5 years. Sadako, run! Live! On their deathbed, the couple still couldn't let go of their baby daughter, but the time was up. Ha 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 ha! Realizing that the shackles that had trapped him for 5 years had disappeared, Steel Scythe held his forehead with one hand, laughing crazily, and his shriveled arms trembled with laughter. So, he laughed and tore off the other 2 heads, but the blood demon art of his clone was obtained by devouring these 2 humans. Its laughter and Sadako's crying intertwined, echoing endlessly in the cave. At this moment, great joy and great sorrow were staged together. The next moment, the laughter stopped abruptly, and Gangjian stretched out its dry and almost broken claws and aimed at the direction of Fei Yuchen and the other 2. It had a crazy smile on its face and clenched its palms while speaking. Die! 2 syllables jumped out of its throat, and in an instant, the water around the raft was boiling and bubbling. The next moment, one after another pale figures with fish heads and human bodies jumped out of the water. There were so many of these figures that they densely covered the entire sky. Fei Yuchen and the other two faced this horrible scene and had nowhere to escape. Blood demon art, fighting in prison. Gangjian's body parts can form clones, which are all accumulated by it over the years. In the past, it was suppressed by Angxia and his wife. Now it feels that it is terribly strong. The raft began to shake violently, and it could be overturned at any time. Fei Yuchen swung his knife while shaking with the raft. In just a few breaths, he had swung his sword nearly 100 times, each time with blazing flames, forming fiery red blade winds that flew in all directions, and his own body was also covered by a layer of faint blood-colored fighting spirit. From a distance, with Fei Yuchen as the core, countless hot blade winds formed the blazing feathers on the wings of a large bird with its wings spread out. Breathing of Tao fire type Suzaku. A loud bird cry could be heard faintly, and Suzaku broke through the white cage, and each blade wind accurately killed a clone. Yi Yang jumped into the sea without hesitation. After all, the raft was still some distance away from the isolated island, and it needed thrust. Angxia Tsutsuko, who was almost collapsed, heard Yi Yang's calm voice like water. "Watch carefully, I will avenge you." Yi Yang didn't know why he said that. After all, he felt bad when he saw Tsutsuko crying, just like seeing his sister who had cried before. He didn't want her to cry, so he had to avenge her. Under the water, Yi Yang held his sword horizontally, and the breathing of water-land type twisting vortex was activated. He used his greatest strength to rotate himself, and a large water tornado was formed. The power generated by the waterspout not only crushed the fish-headed human monsters swimming around, but also pushed the raft towards the isolated island. After doing everything, Yi Yang jumped out of the water by stepping on the head of a clone, but there were still a dozen people following him, and he ignored them because he absolutely trusted Fei Yuchen. Sure enough, a flash of lightning flashed, and the huge Kylan swallowed the clones under Yi Yang's feet. Then the two of them almost fell on the raft, moving at high speed together. Needless to say, they were naturally full of tacit understanding. Steel Sickle looked incredible, and a solemn look appeared on his skinny face. "Are these two guys pillars?" No, no, no. They are not." It immediately denied this idea and clenched the sickle in its hand. The clones were too weak, and no matter how many there were, it was useless. It still had to rely on itself. "I can kill them both," Steel Sickle encouraged himself. The raft landed safely. Angxia Tsutako, who was sitting on it, witnessed the two young men rushing towards the evil ghosts with knives, rushing towards her enemies. Yi Yang's words echoed in her ears. "Watch carefully, I will avenge you." She wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes stubbornly, stared at Yi Yang's back, and murmured. "I will watch, help me avenge, thank you." At this moment, more than a dozen clones jumped out from the water behind Tsutako again, and they attacked her with their fangs and claws. Even so, her eyes never left Tomioka Yi Yang. She wanted to watch him avenge her, and she was not afraid of death. Chapter 46. In a trance, Angxia Tsutako saw an S-shaped stream passing by her. The stream was gentle at the moment it passed by and then became cold. It was Tomioka Jiyu who was carrying the stream. Water-breathing three forms flowing. After dealing with the clones that surged onto the shore, Jiyu rushed to the battlefield again to assist Fei Yuchen in the battle. His greatest talent was his precise observation and calm judgment in battle. When fighting together, he could predict the opponent's upcoming moves through the details of the opponent's movements, so as to cooperate with his comrades at any time. But Gangjian was worthy of being one of the former lower strings. He was not at a disadvantage in a one-on-two fight. Of course, both sides were testing and did not try their best. In Tsutako's eyes, she could only see three afterimages, one blue, one yellow, and one white, but even if she could not see anything, she still stared closely. Because she knew that the blue afterimage was Jiyu. "Damn kid, ah!" Gan Sickle roared, and a stronger aura burst out of his body. The sickle in his hand flashed with cold light and quickly became huge. In the blink of an eye, the sickle had grown to more than 10 meters long. He hugged it and swung it violently. The giant sickle cut through the air, bringing a sharp sound of wind. This attack was like a meteorite, instantly hitting Fei Yuchen and Yayu, but the two could not retreat but could only block it. After all, the island was not big, and dodging would accidentally hurt innocent people. Fei Yuchen still underestimated the strength of the lower string, not to mention that he was one of the lower strings in the past. Although he and Yayu were talented, they were still young and their physical strength had not reached the peak. They had to take it seriously. The breath of Tao Mountain formed Suan Wu, Fei Yuzhen was surrounded by a yellowish-brown fighting spirit, and he quickly swung his sword in all directions, but the starting style of Suanwu was very different from that of Suzaku. Suanwu, who had learned the defensive sword technique through the perception of the breath of rock, swung the sun wheel sword in a circle, and the blade wind circulated inward, motionless like a mountain. A pale golden Suanwu with rock patterns all over its body could be seen emerging, and the black snake on the turtle's back bit the blade, and the giant sickle was blocked outside. Seeing this scene, the steel sickle's pupils shook. Not a pillar, but better than a pillar. This damn kid is hiding his incompetence. Does he look down on me? When he thought of this, he was so angry that his face turned green. Under his dry skin, veins like small snakes bulged out. The giant sickle tilted like a mountain falling, and the ground under Fei Yuzhen's feet cracked. Yi Yang held the knife tightly. He didn't know why Fei Yuzhen gave him the position of main attack. Obviously, he was stronger and more suitable for this position. Fei Yuzhen said that you were pretending to be so powerful, and I, as a buddy, must arrange the lineup for you. You keep saying you are helping people get revenge, so you have to kill that ghost. Ha ha ha. Steel Sickle hid the surprise in his eyes and started to mock, two little bastards who don't know how to live or die. One was pressed by me and couldn't move, and the other was scared and didn't dare to move. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Too trash, it's your honor to die in my hands. Who knew that as soon as it finished speaking, thunder rumbled and the red gold unicorn-shaped blade wind rose from the ground, and the giant sickle was broken in half. Fei Yuzhen mocked back without showing any weakness, saying, "Your broken thing is not strong, does being expelled from the lower string count?" Tisk, tisk, tisk. Hearing this, Steel Sickle broke down again. He didn't understand why this damn kid kept biting on this matter. You are looking for death. It was so angry that its teeth itched, and it bit its teeth so hard that it creaked, like setting off firecrackers. After the trash talk session, Steel Scythe Sickle appeared in its hand in the blink of an eye. It turned into a cannonball and rushed straight towards Fei Yuzhen. Wherever it passed, the ground cracked. Yi Yang quickly stepped aside. Since he really wanted to be the main attacker, he had to seize the opportunity and kill him with one blow. Fei Yuzhen's body was covered with light blue fighting spirit, and his agile figure was like a dragon turning the river and the sea upside down. For a moment, with swords and shadows, he and Steel Scythe fought to a draw. Yi Yang left the battle. In this way, he had already used 70% of his strength, and still retained 30% of his strength to deal with emergencies. Boy, it seems to be hard. Let you pretend, do you think you can beat me alone? You will pay the price for your arrogance. Seeing that he had the upper hand, Steel Scythe couldn't help but speak out. He felt that it was only a matter of time to kill this arrogant kid. Seizing the opportunity, it chopped peppers fiercely. In an instant, 5 white clones sprang out from the ground. Not only in the water, but also on the shore. The clones surrounded Fei Yuzhen from all directions. Now even Yi Yang, who was as calm as water, couldn't hold his temper. If he didn't take action, something bad would happen. However, he met Fei Yuzhen's confident eyes and gave up the idea in his mind. When the 5 clones pounced on Fei Yuzhen's body when he came up, Gang Jian was surprised to find that it was just an afterimage. That's right, in order to become a qualified wingman, he used 90% of his strength, but still left a layer to deal with unexpected events. Unfortunately, Gang Jian was distracted, and Fei Yuzhen seized a new opportunity. I saw a dragon condensed by his afterimage locked Gang Jian, its legs disappeared, and its body fell uncontrollably. Now, this is Yi Yang's turn. I saw him twist his body and rush towards the evil ghost at the fastest speed in his life. Water-breathing picking type life flow. Wave after wave, a faucet appeared on the azure sun wheel sword. In just a few breaths, Yi Yang had twisted it 10 times. Each twist was accompanied by a powerful force. As his movements became faster and faster, the speed of the faucet became higher and higher. When his knife chopped at Gang Jian's neck, the life flow had been superimposed to the 12th turn, which was Yi Yang's best result so far. With one strike, the demon's head was cut off. The world of Gang Jian turned upside down, and its shriveled head drew a beautiful arc in the air, and finally fell into the sea. With a gurgle, several bubbles exploded on the water surface, and then everything returned to calm, just like Yi Yang's mood at the moment. He held the knife and looked at the slowly dissipating body of the evil demon. He seemed to have realized something, but it still took time to temper it, but it was a good start to have this moment. Good job. Fei Yuzhen, the best auxiliary and gold medal wingman of the game, patted Yi Yang on the shoulder, and then pushed him in front of Angzia Tsutsuko. Tsutsuko raised her head, her black gemstone-like eyes sparkled, and she looked at Tomioka Yi Yang like that. Revenge. Yi Yang still had a cold face and said. Yet. Thank you, Yi Yang. Tsutsuko covered her face and cried bitterly, her small figure was so pitiful. Fei Yuzhen was dumbfounded. That's it. And then, the girl just lost her parents and cried so sadly in front of you, and you just watched? Shouldn't you give her some support, or at least a tissue? Seeing Yi Yang still standing there stupidly, Fei Yuzhen held his forehead helplessly. I can't take her at all. He walked to Yi Yang and whispered, give her something to wipe her tears. I don't have one. Then comfort her. How do you comfort her? Chapter 47. Hearing the dirty words said by Fei Yuzhen, Yi Yang tilted his head in confusion. It's not good to say such words now. Thinking carefully, what Zhen said always has his reasons, so Yi Yang said to Tsutako. The corner of his mouth twitched, and Zhen almost broke on the spot. He sighed imperceptibly and said, let's go. It's not suitable to stay here for a long time. I want to be quiet. Oh. Who is Jing Jing? Get on the boat. Fei Yuzhen glared at Yi Yang. Fortunately, he knew this guy's personality and had a good temper, otherwise it would be difficult to find a reason not to hit him. Okay. Fei Yuzhen and Yi Yang rowed the boat, and Tsutako sat there blankly, not knowing what she was thinking. Witnessing the death of parents with one's own eyes, it always takes time to accept the fact. The raft moved forward slowly, and gradually, the pure moonlight pierced the darkness of the cave, and the three saw the light of day again. Standing on the raft and looking far away, the moonlight sprinkled on the water, forming a silver glow, and the scene was as beautiful as a dream. Look, the three of them came out. Yes, does that mean the monster is dead? Great. Heroes, they are the heroes of Yulin village. The villagers on the shore did not return, they had been waiting outside the cave in fear. Seeing this, the village chief burst into tears. Thanks to the two young men outside the village, he did not make a big mistake. Surrounded by a group of villagers, Fei Yuzhen and Yi Yang returned to Yulin village. In fact, the people in the village are not bad, they are just too scared. They are very lucky to meet the two, otherwise they would become murderers. After returning to the village, the whole village specially held a bonfire party on the beach for the two. After a big battle, Fei Yuzhen was really hungry, he ate with his stomach open, and boasted to the villagers while eating. Some were happy and some were sad, and the whole village was singing and dancing, while Angzia Tsutsuko was sitting alone by the sea in a daze, as if the joy of this world did not belong to her. A cold wind blew across the girl's sad eyes, and the cold boy appeared in her peripheral vision. Are you alone? Yi Yang asked nonsense, and then sat next to her. Yet. Tsutsuko nodded, and did not complain about Yi Yang. She pointed to the lively party and asked, aren't you going over there? That's for you. Don't like the excitement? After a simple exchange, the two stopped talking and let the wind blow. After a long while, Yi Yang spoke, and he said calmly. You are lucky. Saying this to a person who just witnessed the death of his parents, his behavior is very annoying. Not really. Tsutsuko just refuted calmly. Yes. Yi Yang emphasized, at least someone will avenge you. When my sister was killed by a ghost, I could only watch her die and could do nothing. Hearing this, Tsutsuko's delicate body trembled, and she finally understood why Yi Yang said that. Yes, at least someone helped her to avenge herself. The sadness in her eyes faded, but in fact it was deeply buried in her heart. Then, a faint smile appeared on her pretty face, and she said. Thank you for comforting me. Yi Yang. In fact, he came here partly because of Anjing, and partly because he wanted to comfort this person with the same name as his sister. What puzzled Yi Yang the most was that his comfort had not yet begun. It was as if the truth that Zhen said to him, people who indulge in the past cannot grasp the future, had not yet been said. By the way, I actually smashed the other 24 shrines. Hearing this, Jiyu's face darkened and he said, I said it wasn't me, but they didn't believe it. By the way, what's your sister's name? Tsutako Tomioka. When she heard the name, Tsutako's eyes trembled and her heart skipped a beat. Was it because of the same name? However, the disappointment was fleeting. She suddenly gave Jiyu a hug and said softly. You have been killing ghosts, but you have been helping your sister to avenge, right? Jiyu's deep eyes were filled with waves, and Tsutako's words were like a beam of warm sunshine, shining through the layers of fog and illuminating the deepest corner of his heart. So I have been avenging my sister all the time. This is the case of the person in charge being confused but the bystander being clear. Tsutako is Jiyu's bystander. As Fei Yuchan guessed, Tsutako's words may be more useful than others. Cough, cough, cough. A few coughs were heard, and Fei Yuchan appeared at an inopportune time. He thought that Yiyang had run away, but he didn't expect that this girl came. Her actions were discovered, and Tsutsuko's mind went blank. White mist kept rising from her head. She stood up in a panic, lowered her blushing face, and ran away from the scene without looking back. Halfway through the run, she stopped, turned around and looked at the two of them, and asked, "Can I join your organization? It's very dangerous. I could die at any time." Fei Yuchan made a grimace, and her tone was gloomy. "It's really dangerous." Yiyang echoed. Then I'm not afraid, it's okay, anyway, I'm the only one left at home." Tsutsuko's goal became firm. She had long wanted to see the outside world, but this time she wanted to see Yiyang's world. Fei Yuchan glanced at Yiyang and said, "Thunder breathing is not suitable for her. Water breathing is easier to learn." Since she has decided, I don't care. Throwing the question to Yiyang, Fei Yuchan ran away at the speed of light, saying, "I'm going to eat delicious food. Bye." Yiyang ignored Fei Yuchan and stared at Tsutsuko intently. "Have you thought it through?" "Yes." "Then I will write a letter to Master, you come with me." "Okay." Before dawn the next day, the holy blade pecked its master awake, and its way of waking him up was particularly useful. Fei Yuchan stared at the holy blade with resentment in his eyes, and said unhappily, "Blade! Shut up!" The holy blade interrupted violently, saying, "I have accepted 20 tasks for you this time, and you are not allowed to rest until you finish them." "How many?" Fei Yuchan's eyes widened, he couldn't believe his ears, the donkeys in the production team didn't do this. While the master was in a daze, the holy blade fired a peck breath, and Fei Yuchan set off with his forehead covered. "Stinky bird, you wait for me!" he scolded while chasing. After dawn, Kanzaburo told Yiyang about Fei Yuchan's departure. At the entrance of Yulin village, Angxia Tsutsuko said goodbye to the villagers one by one. The village chief was the most reluctant to let her go, as she had watched the girl grow up. "Tsutsuko, are you really leaving?" "Grandpa village chief, I'm going outside." Tsutsuko hugged the village chief and replied, "Don't worry, I can take care of myself, not to mention Yiyang is here." Since he had made up his mind, the village chief no longer tried to keep her. He walked to Yiyang and took his hand, saying earnestly, "Brother, I'll leave Tsutsuko to you." "Okay." Yiyang nodded. He didn't hear that the village chief was talking about marrying his granddaughter. Chapter 48. On a dark and windy night, an evil ghost was running desperately in the endless wilderness. It had a broken arm. With the recovery ability of ghosts, it was not a problem to regenerate the broken arm, but a human chopped off its dream of regeneration. The evil ghost turned his head and stared at the back with wide eyes. The expression on his face was as if he had seen the end of the world. It really didn't know what sins it had committed in its previous life to meet such a perverted ghost slayer. "Hey, hey, hey! Listen, ghosts in front, please give up resistance, you are surrounded by me alone. Resistance will be treated severely, confession will be treated leniently. Get lost, you lunatic!" The evil ghost cursed and sped up. It didn't want to die, especially at the hands of this guy. The perverted ghost slayer mentioned by the ghost was none other than Tiandao Fei Yuchen. More than half a year had passed since the Yulin village incident, and he had not met another 12 demon moons during this period. He felt very uncomfortable because his wish to kill a 12 demon moons had not been fulfilled. In the past 6 months, Toma had completed more than 80 missions and had long met the conditions for promotion to a pillar, but this was the condition of the Demon Slayer Corps, not his own requirements. He told Yubayashiki Yoya that he would not become a pillar unless he killed the 12 demons. The Lord knew that Toma was a casual person, so he let him go. "Brother Ghost, do you want to tell me where your boss Muzan Kibutsuji is?" "Don't be afraid, I kill demons very gently." Toma was still talking nonsense, and was almost broken by the demon. "Brother Ghost, give me a bottle of wisteria tea." If you don't drink it, you will be poisoned. Why are you not a lower string? Ah, I'm going to kill you, you chatterbox. The evil demon gave up escaping and turned to fight with Toma. Under the night sky, a red gold meteor streaked across the grass, and the evil demon died with a smile. Fei Yuzhen made a knife flower, sheathed the knife and complained, alas! Are the psychological endurance of ghosts so poor nowadays? It seems that the scum boss needs to strengthen the psychological construction of employees. Just then, a breeze blew across the grass, blowing his sun earrings and high ponytail of the same style as Tanjiro. In the past 6 months, Fei Yuzhen has grown long hair, and then tied it into a style like Sugakoko Yuichi. With his dark red hair color, he looks quite similar. Complete the 10th target of this month, dinner, dinner. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the wilderness. Kyobashi District, Tokyo Prefecture, suburban slums. The dilapidated slums are full of theft, robbery, and even murder all year round. The Fuzugawa family lives in such a place. A drunken middle-aged man staggered and pushed open the door. He had white hair and a fierce face. The moment he entered the door, the whole family was scared and dared not move. The air seemed to freeze. In the room was a woman with bruises on her face and her 7 children, the oldest of whom was Fushigawara Shimizu. He looked at the bastard man not far away with contempt. That man was not even worthy of being a human being. Shimizu would never recognize him. Gambling, alcoholism, beating and scolding his wife and children, and even almost selling his daughter to the Red Street for money, can such a person be worthy of being a father? Asshole, what is that look of yours? Do you look down on me? The man was very annoyed by the look of his eldest son. The undisguised contempt and fierceness made him look like a little wolf cub. You have never earned a penny for the family, let alone supported us. We all depend on Mom. How can I look up to you, a drunkard and a gambler? Fushigawara Shia's temper came up on the spot, and he retorted mercilessly. Looking for death. The man threw the bottle at him, but Shia dodged it easily. Damn it, I'll beat you to death, you rebellious son. The man picked up a stick beside him and hit Shia hard, regardless of whether he would accidentally hurt his wife and daughter around him. With a loud bang, the straw mat on the ground was pulled apart, and the wooden stick fell from Shia with a strong wind. If he had dodged a little slower, he would definitely have died. Woo 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 woo. Wow wow wow. The younger brother and sister on the side were frightened and cried loudly. Hearing that the man was upset, he swung the stick without hesitation. Shia's mother wanted to stop him but couldn't stand up because she had just been beaten yesterday. Asshole! Shimei rushed up and threw the man down. He could tolerate this beast attacking him, but he could not tolerate him attacking his family. The man was drunk and was actually weak inside. The stick was knocked away and he and Shimei fought outside. One was to protect his family from harm, and the other was to hurt his family. You bastard, let go of my brother. A child with dark coxcomb hair rushed out of the house roaring. He was from the Bizikawa family. The second son, Fushigawara Swanya. Although Swanya is only 10 years old, he has always wanted to help his brother and mother to support everyone. Finally, with the joint efforts of the Fushigawara brothers, they beat the man away by exchanging injuries. The man ran while speaking vicious words to his own son. You 2 little ungrateful wolves, I will kill you 2 sooner or later. Damn you! For the man, the most painful thing is that he did not get the gambling money from home. This is the purpose of his return home. After all, he has not been home for 2 months. Shimei, Swanya, come back soon, let him take the money. If something happens to you too, how can I live? Mrs. Fushigawara looked at the pair of scarred and blood-stained sons in front of her with a distressed face, and tears could not stop flowing from her eyes. She stretched out her hand tremblingly, gently stroked their faces and hair, and then she carefully hugged the 2 children tightly in her arms. Mom, I'll pick up more rags tomorrow, and sooner or later you can live a good life. Fushigawara Shimei smiled, his eyes full of hope, because he still has his family. At this time, he was not so sharp, after all, his family was still there. I will also help my eldest brother, and I will definitely make everyone happy. Xianmi said with a smile. After being driven away, the man turned into the dirty alley unwillingly, still cursing his family. Unconsciously, he walked out of the alley. Across the alley was a restaurant, and a young man was sitting in front of his window. There was a lot of delicious food on the table in front of the boy, and you can tell that it will cost a lot of money just by looking at it. Waiter, give me another table of the same later. The boy slapped a stack of money on the table, and his bulging cheeks moved back and forth, and he could hardly stuff the food. Dear guest, please wait a moment, the kitchen is cooking. The waiter looked flattering, after all, the person in front of him was a big customer who ordered dishes by table. Seeing all this, the man was extremely jealous. Damn it! How come that little bastard has so much money? Why don't I have it? You like to show off, right? That money will be mine in a while. Thinking about it, the corners of his mouth curled up. Isn't the gambling money here? The first rule of the slums is not to show off your wealth if you don't have the ability. Chapter 49. Fei Yuzhen, who was full of wine and food, rubbed his stomach and murmured comfortably. He looked out the window and thought about finding a place to sleep. After leaving the restaurant, he walked slowly towards the city, but just a dozen meters away, he noticed that someone was following him. So, after a lot of twists and turns, Fei Yuzhen went back to the slums. After all, it was inconvenient to take action in the city. He wanted to see who was not sleeping in the middle of the night and followed someone. Fushigawujin looked at Fei Yuzhen with a puzzled look as he walked into a dead end. He didn't expect that the big fat sheep was actually an idiot. He was confused by the loss. Hey! Where is this? Fei Yuzhen scratched his head and sighed in confusion. In fact, he was thinking about why the man didn't take action. He couldn't help but want to beat him. Fushigawujin looked around, carefully picked up a brick on the ground, waited a few times, and walked into the alley with confidence. He couldn't beat that kid at home because he was drunk, but now it's different. He feels that he can beat 10 little brats after sobering up. Boy, lend me some money to use Hubi. Seeing that it wasn't a ghost, Fei Yuzhen suddenly felt bored and disappointed. Stinky boy, don't force me to do it, I don't want to kill anyone today. Seeing that the other party was unmoved, Fushigawujin threatened viciously. Fei Yuzhen pretended to be scared, screamed a few times in a very perfunctory manner, and then said, "Oh! Someone is robbing, I'm so scared. Who will save me? Damn, this stinky boy is playing tricks on me. You forced me to do it, I can't beat you to death." Unknown how terrifying the man in front of him was, Bulletin Si Chuanjin rushed up with a brick. After a while, the screams in the dead end gradually subsided. Fei Yuzhen crossed his legs, and the bruised Bulletin Si Chuanjin served as a cushion under his buttocks. He kowtowed and begged for mercy humbly, "Little brother, please forgive me. I was bewildered for a moment, it's all my fault, please, don't hit me anymore. By the way, I have a few daughters at home, they are pretty, if you want." Before he finished speaking, Fei Yuzhen slapped him in the face and said unhappily, "Are you still a human being?" "Not a human being, not a human being, whatever you say is what it is." Bulletin Si Chuanjin laughed instead of getting angry, wagging his tail and begging for mercy like a pug. He didn't expect this kid to be so fierce, so he could only admit defeat. After a while, Fei Yuzhen suddenly realized a problem. He always felt that this man looked familiar. He lowered his head, grabbed the man's hair and lifted his head, and asked, "What's your name?" "Big brother, my name is Fuzukawa." Before the man finished speaking, Fei Yuzhen's eyes lit up. "Fuzukawa, Fuzukawa, isn't that the surname of the future wind pillar?" "Ha ha ha, very good. Very good." He laughed and continued to ask, "You have a son named Fuzukawa Shia, right?" Fuzukawa Jin was confused. How did this man know the name of that little beast? No, if he knew it, it meant that he had investigated it in advance. So, he definitely likes boys. After all, those rich and powerful people play very lavishly, and little boys are sometimes more expensive than little girls. In Fuzukawa Jin's view, Fei Yuzhen belongs to the category of rich people who play lavishly. "If you like, I still have many sons, sir." He looked at Fei Yuzhen with a flattering face, and a very ugly smile squeezed out of his bruised face. "Fei Yuzhen! What the hell? I don't mean that. You bought your daughter and sold your son, right? Asshole!" In anger, he kicked Fushigawujin Jin away, but the guy fainted directly. "Damn it! I haven't asked where your home is yet." "Slap him in the face, pour cold water." Fei Yuzhen used all the necessary means, but Fei Yuzhen waited until midnight and the guy didn't wake up. He slept like a dead pig. In desperation, he simply ignored it. Anyway, he had obtained useful information. The Fushigawara family must be in this slum. He could just ask someone about it. The next morning, Feiyuzhen spent some money to ask people in the slum about the address of the Fushigawara family. Here, money is more useful than outside. It is too easy to find a person or a place. Shimai, stop picking up rags. A guy paid to find out where your house is, and he is going there. A little beggar suddenly stopped Shimai, who was pulling the cart, and said breathlessly that Shimai had helped him before, and he happened to see Feiyuzhen paying for directions. In a place like the slum where the law and order is chaotic, the person who pays for directions can only be a debt collector or a murderer. Hearing this, Shimai's hair stood up. He held down the little beggar and said in a louder voice, "What did you say? Go home quickly, it's probably a debt collector. Xianmi, watch the car." Shimai turned his head and warned him, then clenched his fists and rushed out. There was no need to think about it. It must be the debt collector who came to the house because the bastard father owed money. "Shimai, the debt collector is red-haired." The little beggar reminded from behind, "Don't recognize the wrong person." "I know." Shimai gritted his teeth, his anger was almost off the charts, "That bastard had better not hurt my family." In fact, he was more worried because his mother was not at home, only the younger brothers and sisters were at home. When Shimai hurried home, he happened to see the red-haired debt collector mentioned by the little beggar. At this moment, Feiyuzhen was smiling, holding a bag of snacks in his hand, and was distributing them to Fuzugawa Shimai's brothers and sisters. But in Shimai's eyes, this warm scene is a debt collector who is taking poisonous things to share with his younger brothers and sisters, and then threatening their families to give money with their lives, otherwise he will not give the antidote. It's not that Shimai has persecution delusion, but the rules of the slums are so cruel. "You bastard, stay away from my family!" Shimai roared, rushed towards Feiyuzhen like a bull, and hit the other's face with a strong fist. But this attack is no different from tickling for Feiyuzhen. Feiyuzhen, who was confused, sat up with his face covered and asked, "Shimai, why are you hitting me?" For Zhen, he knew a lot about Fuzugawa Shimai, so he was naturally not on guard against him, but he overlooked one thing, that the other party didn't know him at all. Shimai tilted his head, thinking that this guy even asked about his name, he must be a debt collector. "I'm hitting you." Feiyuzhen. Before he could explain, Shimai rushed over with his fists waving, and he had to dodge. In terms of skills, even 100 Shimai would be useless, but he didn't want to fight. "Is there any misunderstanding here?" he asked while dodging. "Did you spend money to find out where my home is?" "That's right, after all, this place is like a maze, and besides, I don't lack that little money, anyway, the public funds will reimburse it." "That's right, you have a knife on you, what else are you if not a debt collector?" "I'm not." "You are." Shimai had a preconceived idea, and now he got angry and beat him up first. Chapter 50. After several unsuccessful attempts, Shimai realized that the other party was definitely a martial artist, someone he could never beat, and he calmed down a lot. Why did this guy give snacks to his younger brother and sister? Was he kind? Thinking of this, Shimai laughed at himself. Even a man who was a father had to sell his children. Can the kindness of strangers be trusted? This was the environment Shimai grew up in. It was really hard for him to believe that someone would be nice to others for no reason. "Yo! Your punch is slow, boy," Feiyuzhen said with a smile. The next moment, he punched quickly, and this punch passed by Shimai's face with terrifying force. In an instant, Shimai's eyes widened, his hair stood up, and waves of fear surged in his heart. This guy deliberately missed the target. Thinking of this, he took a breath of cold air. The other party was much stronger than he thought. "I really have no ill intentions, otherwise do you think you can stop me?" Feiyuzhen patted Shimai's shoulder and smiled slightly. "So what do you want to do, Charity? I don't believe there are good people in this world who do things for nothing." Shimai had a gloomy face, and he was still very vigilant. "Hey!" Feiyuzhen laughed and teased, "You saw it today. I like to meddle in other people's business." "Hey!" Shimai looked at him as if he was mentally retarded. This guy must have a problem with his brain. Ignoring Shimai, Feiyuzhen walked into his house on his own. Shimai was about to stop him, but he turned his back and waved his hand, saying, "Yesterday, a guy named Fushigawara robbed me." Hearing this, Shimai was stunned. That damn man was causing trouble again. Sorry. I was impulsive. He immediately bowed 90 degrees to apologize. Although he hated his bastard father all the time, he felt a little guilty when he thought that he had just beaten Fei Yuzhen, who was also a victim of his father. Fei Yuzhen didn't care at all. After all, this guy was loyal and righteous. He turned his head with a smile and said, "Forget about the apology. Do you think he can beat me?" But he changed the subject and continued, "But I am the victim. It's okay for me to rest at your house for a few days, right?" This. Xia was speechless for a moment. The main reason was that he was really wrong in this matter, but it was difficult to support such a large family, let alone one more mouth. Fei Yuzhen knew Xia's difficulties. He took out a wad of money from his pocket and threw it to the other party, saying, "This is my accommodation and meal expenses." Xia's eyes almost popped out. He had never touched so much money in his life. He was dumbfounded. So this is the world of rich people? By the way, is this too much? Of course, he will soon realize that the money given by Fei Yuzhen is very reasonable. In the evening, the Fuzugawa family started eating. There was one more person in the small room, which made it even more crowded. There were many delicacies that the family had never seen before on the table, and the quantity was even more puzzling. "Why don't you eat? I didn't poison it." Fei Yuzhen held a roasted chicken, his cheeks stuffed full, and asked vaguely. "Mr. Tiandao, this money is for you. You are Shimai's friend. If you want to stay, you don't need to pay." Mrs. Fushigawara pushed the money in front of Fei Yuzhen and said softly. Swallowing the food in his mouth, he waved his hand and said, "Auntie, Shimai once saved me. If you still refuse, it will be difficult for me to deal with it." Hearing this, Shimai was stunned. "When did I save your life? How could I not know? Eat quickly, it won't taste good if it gets cold." Without their mother's permission, the little kids in the Fushigawara family just drooled and stared. Although they were poor, they had to listen to their mother. Well, thank you, Mr. Tiandao." As soon as Mrs. Fushigawara finished speaking, several little kids with baby voices echoed her. "Thank you, Mr. Tiandao. What's wrong with this guy?" Shimai didn't understand, or maybe his cognition in the slums for so many years was broken. Or maybe he remembered what Fei Yuzhen said to him, "I like to meddle in other people's business." With Fei Yuzhen, the happy treasure, joining in, the laughter at the dinner table never stopped. The Fushigawara family hadn't heard such laughter for a long time. At night, Shimai sat outside the house alone, and he still couldn't figure out why. At this moment, Fei Yuzhen sat next to him and joked. "Why, you still think I'm a bad guy?" Xia turned his head away proudly and said, "Who knows, I've seen many guys who can disguise themselves." "Whatever you think." Fei Yuzhen stood up and stretched. No matter what, he caught up. The next step is to find a way to make the Fuzugawa family move away. This is what he is most worried about. According to the plot, Mrs. Fuzugawa became a ghost, and the Fuzugawa family was almost wiped out. Then who can assimilate ordinary people into ghosts, or in other words, except for the scum boss and the upper string, which ghost dares to do this? At this moment, in a corner of the slums, the drunk Fuzugawa-jin was venting his anger at the air. Suddenly, a black figure broke into his blurred vision. He was worried that he had nowhere to vent his anger, and this punching bag was delivered to his door. "Damn, who are you? Don't you know that this is my territory?" "Oh." A cold questioning voice sounded, and this voice seemed to come from the abyss, with a chilling breath, and Fuzugawa-jin sobered up instantly. "I saw a tall young man standing in the moonlight, his clean and tidy suit was out of tune with the dirty alley. The man's skin was pale, without a trace of blood, just like a piece of white paper, and his plum-red eyes revealed bloodthirstiness and cruelty. Just by looking at the man, Fuzugawa-jin was frightened and dared not move. It was not that he did not want to escape, but his legs were already weak. At this moment, he could not even move his feet, let alone turn around and run away. He could not imagine how terrifying the creature standing in front of him was. This was the ancestor of all ghosts. Kibutsuji Musen. It has only one nemesis, and that is the dead Tsugakoku Yoriichi. In this era, no one can kill it except the sun, at least for the time being. What did you just say? Say it again. Musen's mouth showed a strange arc. He was in a good mood today because he seemed to have news about the blue-red spider lily. He would not kill the little bug in front of him, but planned to give him a chance. As for whether he could bear it, it depended on luck. I. Looking at those scarlet eyes that were devouring people without leaving any bones, Fushigawajin was so scared that he stuttered. He knelt down with a plop. He knew that he had hit a wall again. He didn't understand why there were so many walls in a small slum. This was unreasonable. Please spare me, don't kill me. He kowtowed frantically, not daring to look into Wuzhen's eyes at all. I don't want to step on bugs today. Wuzhen's cold voice almost froze his blood, but when he heard that he didn't have to die, he was relieved. The next moment, Wuzhen's index finger inserted into his temple. Chapter 51. As the ghost blood was injected into the body of Fushigawajin, his head began to swell rapidly, and the dark purple blood vessels bulged as if they were about to break through the skin. Wuzhen retracted his index finger and left without looking back. He didn't care whether this human lived or died, let alone whether he could become a ghost. Everything was just a whim. After all, if the lifespan was too long, he would always have to find some fun for himself. Fushigawajin sat slumped in the corner. His head was still swelling, and gradually became thinner and larger, looking like a dark purple balloon, or the kind that could explode at any time. Gradually, his swollen head began to shrink. It adapted to the ghost blood, but in the end, the head was still 3 times larger than that of an ordinary person. At the same time, an irrepressible feeling of hunger came to his heart. He wanted to eat, especially his family. Hungry. I'm so hungry. But I think I'm so strong, ha ha ha. Fushigawajin staggered to his feet, drooling like a waterfall. He had just completed his transformation into a ghost but still retained a little consciousness. It must be said that he was very talented in being a ghost. Following his instinct, he stumbled towards home. This was also the bad taste of the trash boss. Humans who had transformed into ghosts always wanted to eat their families first. Aren't you going to sleep? Shimai yawned and turned to walk into the house. When he reached the door, he paused, turned his head and said to Fi Yuzhen, "Thank you for letting my family have a big meal. I will pay you back later." Fi Yuzhen smiled and waved his hand, saying nonchalantly, "It doesn't matter. I'll eat and drink at public expense. I'm the boss." Listening to Fi Yuzhen's words, Shimai was speechless for a moment. Can such words be said blatantly? Why is this guy even a little proud? He is really thick-skinned. At this moment, Fei Yuzhen drew out his knife with a serious face. He stared at the dark alley in the distance and warned. "Shimai, close the doors and windows, and don't come out no matter what you hear." "What's wrong?" As soon as Shimai finished speaking, a 2-meter-tall figure appeared in his sight. The man's eyes flashed a creepy red light, and his head was much larger than that of an ordinary person. "Hungry. I'm so hungry. Let me bite your neck off, little beast." Ha ha ha. Fushigawajin stared at Shimai like a hungry wolf, and his teeth collided with each other, making a crackling sound. "How did you get into this state, beast? Get out of here!" Shimai cursed loudly. No matter what his bastard father became, the disgusting aura still lingered, like a stone in a toilet. Fei Yuzhen spread his legs and posed as if he was going to draw his sword and chop. He frowned and felt very complicated. Of course, it was not because of the newly turned demon, Fushigawajin, but because of the guy who turned him into a demon. He was in the same neighborhood with Wuzhen or one of the upper ranks, and the thought of it was stressful, not to mention that there was a whole family behind him that needed to be protected. Who could it be? Wuzhen or the upper one, or the upper 3? Of course, in addition to the upper 6 siblings and the cowardly upper 4, any upper rank could be a possibility. "You little brat, you know you're scared now. I'm so strong now that it's useless even if you have a knife." Seeing Fi Yuzhen's serious expression, Fushigawajin felt that he was good again. Who knew that as soon as he finished speaking, a swift lightning flashed in front of his eyes, so fast that he had no time to react. Fi Yuzhen was just about to sheath his knife when he found that Fushigawajin's body had not dissipated, which also meant that the beheading had failed. Just as he was about to finish off the enemy, he saw a circle of black muddy substance swallowing up the body and head of Fushigawajin. Is this blood demon art? Did this guy just become a demon? How could there be a blood demon art? "You 2 little bastards, wait for me!" Fushigawajin roared angrily. If it weren't for the awakened space-type blood demon art, he would have died just now. "Remember, from now on, I'm called Lazy Kong. I'll kill you too sooner or later. The black muddy pool seeped into the ground, and Lazy Kong, who almost died before his mission was unsuccessful, also disappeared. How much demon blood did this guy receive? The most outrageous thing is that he still endured it. Fei Yuzhen suddenly felt that this world was so abstract. He looked around and made sure there was no danger. He walked towards Shimai, whose worldview was overturned, with a vigilant look on his face. Why can that bastard still talk after being chopped? Why did he disappear? What do you do? Calm down, calm down. Fei Yuzhen smiled and signaled Xia to calm down, listen to my explanation. Film moments later, Shimai roughly figured out the existence of demons and the Demon Slayer Corps. You mean that bastard is not a human anymore? Yet. Toma nodded, he was still alert. After all, the blood demon art of Fuzugawa Jin was a little unpredictable, and the most important thing was that the guy who turned into a demon might still be nearby. Then how can I join your Demon Slayer Corps? If I don't kill it as you said, it will kill my mother and the others. Hearing this, Toma immediately became interested, and was worried that there was no reason to trick Fuzugawa's family to move away. Joining is easy, as long as I write a letter of introduction for you, but killing demons is very dangerous, and you may die at any time. Then aren't you doing this? Shimai was not bluffed but asked Toma instead. Sure. Fei Yuzhen patted Shimai's shoulder, then you can move. I can lend you the money first, and you can pay me back when you become a formal team member. Thank you very much, I am grateful for your kindness. If you have any problems in the future, call me, and I will give you my life. Shimai patted his chest and promised very seriously. Well, don't be so serious, just treat it as making friends, ha ha ha. Fei Yuzhen scratched his head uncomfortably, giving me your life is too serious. But Fuzugawa Shimai is a man who values friendship and loyalty. He keeps his word. Once Fei Yuzhen is in danger, he will really risk his life. The next morning, Fei Yuzhen immediately wrote a letter to report the matter to the Lord. The Lord replied quickly, and the Holy Sword returned to Fei Yuzhen in about 3 days. How is it? Shimai asked impatiently as soon as Fei Yuzhen finished reading the letter. My lord has agreed. I still have some faith. Anyway, there are many empty houses in the headquarters. You can just choose one when the time comes. This is one of the benefits of the Demon Slayer Corps. We will definitely take good care of your family and let you have no worries. Taking advantage of the night, the Fuzugawa family moved out of the slums. Because there were so many people and children, the group arrived at the headquarters more than half a month later. After settling the Fuzugawa family, Toma introduced Shimizu to a wind-breathing trainer. The day after he returned to the headquarters, the final selection had been over for a week, and the Butterfly Sisters were expected to return to the headquarters soon, so he asked for a few days off. In addition, there were not many tasks recently, and Yubayashiki Yoya approved him a leave. Although Toma is not a pillar now, he is treated at the level of a pillar in various ways. Chapter 52. Demon Slayer Corps Headquarters. The water droplets on the roadside sparkled brightly under the warm sun, like crystal clear gems, emitting charming brilliance. Fei Yuzhen leaned against a boulder next to the entrance like a door god, holding a large bag of dumplings in his arms, looking forward to it, with light in his eyes. That's right, today is the day when Shinobu returns to the headquarters. For him, it is a good day worth celebrating. In fact, he waited here before dawn, or he did not sleep after receiving Shinobu's letter last night, not for anything else, just to see Shinobu the first time he woke up. Ah! Fei Yuzhen yawned, and in a trance, he found that a figure appeared on the horizon at some point. He just wanted to take a few steps forward to see it clearly, but 3 different female voices came from behind him. Lord Tianyuan, I miss you so much, woohoo! Lord Tianyuan, let's go back and have a baby. Tianyuan, welcome home. With a bang, the 3 women were like a speeding car, knocking Fei Yuzhen away. Even after such a misfortune, the dumpling was still intact in his arms. Heads can be cut off, but delicious food cannot be wasted. Fei Yuzhen fell to the ground dizzy and almost ate a mouthful of dirt. He didn't understand where the 3 girls got so much strength. When he looked up, a scene that made all men envious and jealous came into view. 3 beauties kissed a tall and mighty man on the face, and the man was hugging left and right, with one hanging on his chest. Tisk! Spreading dog food in broad daylight. What kind of person is that? Fei Yuzhen spat, helplessly supported his chin with both hands, and ate the whole dumpling in one bite. The tall man came to Fi Yuchen like a star surrounded by moons. He stretched out his hand, and the jewelry on his body dazzled Fi Yuchen so much that he couldn't open his eyes. "Brother, are you okay? Why are you lying on the ground?" Uzui Tenjin asked puzzledly. He didn't see the scene of his wife breaking into the flying man, so he was very strange. Especially the man lying on the ground looked very similar to the guy that the Lord often mentioned. Fi Yuchen stood up, brushed off the dust on his body, and complained unhappily. "It's because someone knocked him away, what do you think?" As he said that, he glanced at the three wives of Huali Ge. "Ah ha ha ha, I'm really sorry." Uzui Tenjin hurriedly took the three wives to apologize. He remembered that this person was Tiandao Fi Yuchen, a very strange guy. He clearly met the conditions to become a pillar, but refused to become a pillar because he didn't kill the 12 demon moons. How gorgeous is this lofty ambition! Tendo Hiwama, I've heard of you. Your ambition is worthy of the word gorgeous. The god of this festival recognizes you very much. Uzui Tenjin laughed and stretched out his hand. "Can we make friends?" "Oh! Have you heard my legend?" Hearing this, Hiwama's golden eyes sparkled. He didn't expect that he had become famous in the Demon Slayer Corps. "That's great! Of course, brother Huali." He grabbed Tenjin's big hand with a little pride on his face. He didn't care about being knocked away at all, and he didn't forget to praise, "You have good taste, it's shining." Hearing Hiwama's address and praise for himself, Uzui Tenjin smiled even more. Few people could understand his gorgeousness when they met for the first time. "Brother, I am a former ninja and current member of the Demon Slayer Corps, Uzui Tenjin." Brother Huali introduced himself and held Hiwama's hand tightly. At this moment, an ethereal female voice suddenly sounded, mixed with a strong feeling of longing and uncontrollable joy, which instantly overwhelmed Fi Yuchen. "Zhen, long time no see. Brother Huali, let's talk later, the person I'm waiting for is here." Fi Yuchen immediately cut off the conversation with Uzui Tenjin and ran towards Koko Shinobu without looking back. Brother Huali turned his head and looked at Fi Yuchen's expression. He understood it immediately, after all, he was a man with 3 wives. Let's go home." Behind Brother Huali, Fi Yuchen ran towards Koko Shinobu, and Koko Shinobu also ran towards Fi Yuchen. This was a two-way run. Because he often went out to perform missions, Fi Yuchen and Shinobu didn't have many opportunities to meet. He took Koko Shinobu into his arms, feeling the warmth and softness of her body, and felt very satisfied. The familiar wisteria fragrance emanating from Shinobu rushed into his nose, making him feel extremely relieved. "Zhen, I'm back." Koko Shinobu buried her little head in Toma's chest and said excitedly, "I successfully killed the demon using the method you told me." Toma rubbed her little head and praised her softly, saying, "I knew Shinobu was the best." Xiang Neiwei didn't know what to say for a moment. These two people really didn't treat themselves as outsiders. She coughed a few times and reminded them. I'm still here." The two finally realized that there was a sister, and they separated embarrassedly. Fi Yuchen was fine. He didn't blush and congratulated Kane without a beat of his heart. "Sister Hui, congratulations on passing the final selection. After all, Koko Shinobu is a girl. Even if she is very outgoing, she is still much more thin-skinned." She was too excited just now and directly forgot that her sister was still there. Her head was lowered very low, almost touching her chest, and her face was as red as a ripe apple, making people want to take a bite. There was a shy and nervous light in her purple eyes, and her hands tightly grasped the corners of her clothes, as if trying to hide the embarrassment in her heart. Kane glanced at Fi Yuchen and teased, "I thought I was ignored, busy man." "Ah ha ha ha." Fi Yuchen scratched his head and laughed a few times. "Okay, I'll go back to the medical department first, you two can do whatever you want, bye." Kane smiled and quickened her pace, leaving space for the two couples who had missed each other for a long time. Halfway through the walk, she suddenly turned back and gave her sister a meaningful smile. "Shinobu, remember to go home tonight." "Sister! When did I not go home?" Shinobu Koko said angrily, and she glared at her sister. "Then bye." Kane waved her hand and disappeared at the entrance in a few steps. Now only Toma and Shinobu were left. The two of them walked slowly, shoulder to shoulder, step by step. The path under their feet seemed to have no end. After all, when the loved one is by your side, there is no way in your heart. The sun cast mottled light and shadow through the leaves, as if the whole world was covered with a layer of golden gauze. The two of them just quietly enjoyed this tranquility and beauty. They hadn't seen each other for a long time, and there were so many things they wanted to say that they didn't know what to say for a while. Before they knew it, the two had reached the gate of the medical department. Fei Yuzhen stopped and asked softly, "Don't you want to go in and take a look?" Coco Shinobu turned her head and took a look, then quickened her pace. She pretended to be stupid and said, "Where is this? Why should I go in?" "Shinobu, let's go to the front." "Okay, okay." Fei Yuzhen nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Shinobu just wanted to stay with Shinobu now, and this alone was enough to make her happy. The two had not walked a few steps when the door of the medical department opened, and a person wrapped in bandages was crawling out little by little. Chapter 53. "Mr. Iguro, please don't be so stubborn. Please go back and rest." A short girl with long hair chased out with a red bow on her head. She was Kyoji Teraki, one of the three little ones in the butterfly house. "I'm fine. I just broke some bones and had a few more wounds on my body." Xiao Bani said impatiently. He stood up with the help of the door frame, but he and Fei Yuzhen looked at each other, and then glared at each other with disgust. Xiao Bani suddenly grinned. The bandages wrapped all over his body could not hide his pride at all. He raised his middle finger and taunted. "Isn't this a good-for-nothing who can't even kill the lower strings? I killed one of the lower strings not long ago. He was as bad as you." After boasting, Xiao Bani felt physically and mentally comfortable, and even the broken bones didn't hurt that much. Hearing this, Fei Yuzhen's mouth twitched, and he responded with an international friendly gesture, retorting, "Don't show off if you can get hurt by killing a lower-ranked rookie. Why, do you want to spar with me?" Xiao Bani did not show any weakness. On the side, Coco Shinobu held her forehead and sighed. This pair of funny people either hurt each other or were on the way to hurt each other every day. In fact, they were closer than brothers. "Xiao Bani, take good care of your injuries. We'll leave first, bye." Shinobu pulled Fei Yuzhen, who was eager to try, and fled the scene at the speed of light. She just wanted to stay together for a while, why was it so difficult? Tisk, two boring guys. Xiao Bani pouted and complained, "If you have that time, you might as well train more." "That, Mr. Xiao Bani, please go back to the ward, okay, okay." Teraka Kyoji's voice became smaller and smaller, because the person in front of him spoke very scary. "Okay." After mocking Fei, he was in a good mood, or he was tight, otherwise when he could beat the bitch. Drilling in the small road, he stopped when he was tired. He held the wall with one hand, and his chest was violently undulating. "Shinobu held my hand, hee hee. Hee hee hee." Soon, Shinobu Coco realized something was wrong. She blushed and shook off Fei Chen's hand, saying embarrassedly, "Sorry, just now it was, that." "It's okay, just use it." Fei Chen stretched out his hand, looking righteous, and those who didn't know him would think he was a generous guy. "What?" Shinobu Coco rolled his eyes at Fei Chen and said unhappily, "Do you still want to take advantage of me?" "Hey!" Fei Chen shook his head and started talking nonsense seriously, "No, it's not taking advantage, I'm just happy to help. Besides, you've held my hand, and my innocence is gone. I won't be able to get married in the future." Fei Chen pretended to be a little girl, with a sad expression that her life was over. For a moment, Shinobu was actually a little deceived by this guy. After all, people of this era are very conservative. Her face turned red, and she looked serious as if she was responsible for you. Her voice could not help but rise a few degrees, and she said, "Then I will be your husband." Before she finished her words, Ren found Fei Yuzhen's expression of success, and changed the subject, angrily. "I don't think you look like someone who can't get married, you bastard." She pinched Fei Yuzhen's ear, "You even touched my hand. Sha, it hurts." "Ren, I'm wrong, isn't it okay? Forget it, I'll spare your life." Ren took back his hand and walked quickly in front, even not forgetting to complain, "If there were no ghosts, you would be a good actor." No, I'm just the best in the world." Fei Yuzhen followed with a smile. He was the kind of person who said I was fat and I was panting, and he didn't know what face was. Just be arrogant. Butterfly Ren rolled his eyes at Fei Yuzhen. It was really hard to praise him. He didn't know how to be humble at all. By the way, I have prepared a surprise for you. Do you want to see it? Fei Yuzhen suddenly looked at Shinobu with a mysterious look and asked. What is it? A surprise? If you tell me about it, it won't be a surprise anymore. As he said that, Fei Yuzhen ran to Shinobu and squatted down, saying, Close your eyes, I'll carry you there. How about it? Okay. Curious about the surprise that Fei Yuzhen mentioned, Shinobu Koko naturally lay on his back and closed her eyes. Let's go. Fei Yuzhen sped up and soon turned into a valley along a hidden path. Are we hiking now? Shinobu Koko noticed that her body was leaning and asked. Yet. Fei Yuzhen responded. Gradually, Shinobu fell asleep on Jensen's shoulder. In fact, she and Fei Yuzhen were just as excited to see each other, so they didn't sleep much last night. Shinobu, get up. The sun is going to shine on your butt. I don't know how long it took before Shinobu Koko heard the gentle voice of Makoto. She slowly opened her eyes, and everything in front of her was blurry, but she still tried to wake herself up. When her vision gradually became clear, she saw Toma's face, with a warm smile on his face. She liked the feeling of being able to see the person she wanted to see as soon as she opened her eyes, and she couldn't help laughing. I'm going to get out of the way, be careful of the glare from the sun. Toma slowly moved away, and it was only then that Shinobu Koko realized that she had already come to a place near the top of the mountain. Looking around, flowers were blooming everywhere, like a colorful sea of flowers. Flowers of various colors, shapes and sizes intertwined with each other, forming a beautiful and spectacular picture. They swayed gently in the breeze, exuding a charming fragrance. This is a sea of flowers that belongs only to Shinobu Koko. How is it? Fei Yuzhen asked proudly. This was planted when he was free, and most of the seeds were brought back when he was on a mission. The most important thing is that this is a sea of flowers that he spent 2 years to build, and he started roughly not long after he arrived at the headquarters. This is my gift to you for passing the final selection. I thought it was too late. Kohiko Shinobu was so surprised that she could hardly speak. She covered her mouth with her hands, and tears flashed in her eyes. She sat there quietly, staring at everything in front of her, with an indescribable warmth and happiness in her heart. I like it very much, super like it. Kohiko Shinobu said excitedly, but she didn't say what she liked. Chapter 54. Slanted Eye Mountain. The last rays of sunset were gradually swallowed by the night, and the originally golden sky gradually became dim. The sun, like a tired old man, slowly sank into the cliff, leaving behind a silence and darkness. Under the cold moonlight, Murata led a team of 5 people to the top of the mountain. From a distance, the mountain looked like an eye hanging obliquely on the horizon, hence the name Slanted Eye Mountain. 10 swordsmen of the Demon Slayer Corps disappeared in the mountain one after another, and there was a village not far from the mountain, so the headquarters directly sent 2 teams of 10 people to check here. Once the existence of the 12 demon moons is discovered, a pillar-level swordsman will come to support. Captain, I'm scared. Looking at the dark and deep woods around him, a new member who just passed the selection this year said with trembling lips. Murata drew his knife and said confidently, Don't be afraid, I'm very strong. You heard about me in the last final selection, right? 100% pass rate. Even ghosts run away when they see me. He said this not only to comfort the newbie, but also to encourage himself. Ah! Run, run! Just then, the originally silent woods were suddenly broken by a shrill cry, which sounded creepy, as if it came from the depths of hell. Then, miserable cries came one after another from the other side of the woods, like the howling of evil spirits, which was chilling. Obviously, this was the same investigation team as Murata's team, and they seemed to have met with an accident. The newcomer was so scared that he immediately rushed into the woods. His brain could no longer think, and he stupidly ran into the side where the screams came from. Come back, it's too dangerous to be alone. Although Murata was not strong, he was an old bird who had killed evil spirits with his own hands. It was a pity that the man didn't listen to him at all. You 3 continue to explore, retreat immediately if there is danger. Got it, Captain. Murata nodded and disappeared into the depths of the jungle in the blink of an eye. The swordsmen of the same class as Fei Yuzhen all have a special glory, and they have seen what it means to be strong, especially the strength of their peers. Since the end of the final selection, their group has been the most hard-working people in the entire Demon Slayer Corps. They know that even if they can't catch up with those geniuses, they can't fall behind. Murata is also proud of that experience and trains harder. In just over a year, he has been promoted from a GUI level swordsman to AC level, which is much stronger than in the plot. After leaving the team, Murata followed the traces all the way up the mountain. The closer he got to the top of the mountain, the more uneasy he felt. Soon he found a bad omen, that is, intermittent bloodstains. Someone was injured. Suddenly, the runaway team member's cry for help came from a distance. "Help, Captain, come and save me." Murata's face sank, and he followed the sound. Finally, he ran out of the dark forest. To be precise, the trees nearby were cut down. On the bare hillside, under the cold moonlight, a demon less than 1.5 meters tall was holding a demon slayer taller than it with one hand. The most peculiar thing was the appearance of this demon. Its arms were 2 meters long, and its body was covered with black fluff, just like a monkey. "Another one is here to die, are you a pillar?" The demon turned his head with a grin, and his cervical vertebrae creaked because he turned his whole head towards Murata. In the face full of black long hair, 2 scarlet eyes the size of eggs looked at Murata with a bit of teasing. Its right eye was engraved with words. The second. The moment Murata saw the number, his heart skipped a beat. It was the 12 ghost moons. He was confused. Such important news, 10 team members were missing, why didn't anyone send the news out? Murata knew he was no match for the enemy, so he roared at the sky, which was to pass the news to his crow. "It's the 12 ghost moons, take the news back quickly." As soon as he finished speaking, a crow flew away. The black figure was like a night elf. It was reluctant to turn its head to look at its master, with a crystal tear hanging from the corner of its eye. It knew the strength of its master very well, and this separation was probably a farewell forever. Before the crow flew far, it found a thin bamboo pole covered with black hair in front of it. It had no time to react and was slapped down by Xia. Its arm, which was several dozen meters long, quickly retracted, and it looked at Murata with a smug look and said, "Now, do you have any other ideas?" He. Murata finally knew why the message could not be sent out. His brain went blank for a moment, and Murata immediately used his greatest strength to he roared out in anger. "Everyone, no matter who can hear it, there are 12 ghost moons in this mountain. Take the news out, you must take it out." The next moment, his eyes became firm, and the water-breathing 10th form Endless Life was activated, and a twisting faucet bit Xia fiercely. "Buy time, you must buy time. It's boring." Xia threw away the swordsman in his hand and smiled disdainfully. A moment later, Murata, who was covered in wounds, was pinched by Xia by the neck. As long as the opponent slightly bent his fingers, he could break his cervical vertebrae. "Weakness is a sin, stupid swordsman." Xia looked at Murata with a proud face as a superior, and even ridiculed him. Hearing this, Murata sneered a few times. He was no longer the cowardly him in the past. Once upon a time, he was no different from the new team member, but that was in the past. The final selection changed him a lot. "It's true that I'm weak, but it's enough to have a strong guy. I can't behead you, there are others, there are people stronger than you. Evil ghost, I'll wait for you in hell." Murata's words made Xia feel uninterested. Killing a guy who is not afraid of death is not fun at all. Only when you are on the verge of death can a person show his inner fragility and sadness without reservation. Fear, despair, helplessness, begging. And for the gibbon, seeing such a pathetic side of human beings is its greatest pleasure. "Then you wait until I kill the person you said is strong, and then you will naturally despair." Xia slapped Murata unconscious with a slap. Before he closed his eyes, he saw 3 crows rushing out of the night in another direction, and a satisfied smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Successfully distracted this guy's attention, and the information was finally passed on. The 3 crows belonged to the other 3 members of Murata's team. When Murata encountered Xia, they were not far away, and the 3 heard his shouts clearly. The gibbon did not notice the 3 crows flying far away, and it had a trump card that even the pillars could deal with. Xia died not long ago. As long as it can kill the pillar of the Demon Slayer Corps, it will have the opportunity to be promoted and get more blood from the scum boss. At least that's what it dreamed. Chapter 55. The crows flew desperately, never stopping for a second, just hoping to send back the message as soon as possible. Finally, the 3 exhausted crows flew to the vicinity of the Yashiki family's mansion, but unfortunately they fell from mid-air before entering. Seeing that they were about to fall to death, a figure flashed by and caught them. Feiyu carefully held them in his arms, with a flash of heartache in his eyes. These little guys are also fighting with their lives. He hurriedly pushed open the door, and Yubayashiki Yoya sat under the eaves as usual, holding a book in his hand, a quiet and handsome man. "Boss, these 3 crows must have something important." There was no one else in the yard, so there was no need to care about those etiquettes. Feiyu Chen sat next to the lord naturally. Yeyu recognized which swordsman the crow in front of him belonged to at a glance, and guessed in his heart that the swordsman who went to Zemu Mountain to investigate was probably in danger. Thinking of this, his heart skipped a beat. There were 20 swordsmen. This was all due to his misjudgment. "Zhen, go to Zemu Mountain, there should be the 12 ghost moons you have always wanted to kill." Guilt filled Yeya's heart. He gently stroked the crow with white eyes, just like stroking a swordsman. "I know, let's go now." Feiyu Chen threw a bottle of the smiling version of Save Your Life 3000 to Yeya, turned around and left. He could see what his lord was thinking, and left a word before leaving. "Yeya, it's not your fault. Everyone is moving towards a better future. Everyone deserves to die. Once we embark on this road, we swordsmen will not be stingy with our lives. Just give orders, don't feel burdened." Yeya waved his hand, and a crow flew out from a corner of the courtyard to lead the way. The annihilation of the exploration team was also within the plan. The crow would be familiar with the route in advance and lead the way at any time. Of course, no one would want to use this backup plan. Looking at the back of Feiyu Chen going away, Yeya squeezed out a bitter smile, and he thanked Zhen for his comfort. It is more appropriate to say that the two are friends rather than superiors and subordinates. But Yubayashiki Yeya is the lord and the decision-maker. Sometimes, his decisions are made with human lives, which is inevitable. So the sense of guilt cannot be erased. This is what the lord of the Demon Slayer Corps must bear. Feiyu Chen set out for Zemo Mountain that day, only him. It was not that the headquarters did not want to send more people, but that there were not so many people. You know, as the only surviving elder of the previous generation, Rengoku Makijiro is always on the way to carry out missions. He is almost 40 years old, which is a very old age for a demon slayer. The afterglow of the setting sun shines through the big-eyed mountain, like a handful of sugar thrown into the sea, and is swallowed up by the deep and dark jungle in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the Slant-Eye Mountain is like a huge black hole, greedily swallowing all the light, wanting to cover the whole world. At the foot of the mountain, 3 swordsmen like savages are looking forward to the entrance of the mountain. They have been waiting for more than 2 days, hoping that the support from the headquarters will arrive soon. That may save Captain Murata's life. Has the headquarters not received the news? Is the captain dead? We must kill that demon and avenge the captain. The captain can't do it, do you think you can? The 3 of them talked one after another, and the atmosphere became more and more solemn, and the sky was chatted to death. To be honest, the 3 newcomers were already desperate. Just then, a fast-moving figure appeared on the horizon. The dusty Feiyuzhen rushed to Zemu Mountain. The 4-day journey was shortened to 2.5 days by him. During this period, he hardly slept. Of course, he could choose to travel normally, but human life was at stake, so it would be best not to delay. Seeing someone coming, the 3 newcomers smiled and their eyes became full of light. It must be the vanguard personnel from the headquarters. Feiyuzhen noticed the 3 people. He stopped in front of them and said, "Hello, I am the support person." "Hey! What? Are you alone? There are 12 ghost moons in the mountain." The 3 newcomers widened their eyes, and the fire of hope in their eyes went out again. Feiyuzhen didn't care about the distrustful eyes of the 3 people. After all, he never accepted the appointment of the pillar. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, others would not know his strength. He patted one of them on the shoulder and said confidently with an irrefutable momentum, "I am enough." After that, Feiyuzhen went into the mountain. The 3 new swordsmen showed astonishment on their faces. They looked at Feiyuzhen in disbelief. The opponent's momentum was like a towering mountain. They were almost breathless. This guy is definitely a pillar. The 3 looked at each other. Since the headquarters sent a pillar, there was nothing to worry about. Feiyu Chen did not ask the 3 for information. After all, their ability to come back alive meant that they did not fight with the 12 demon moons, and it was not worth wasting time. In this case, it is better to kill them on the mountain by themselves. A knife in hand is enough. Looking at the dark woods gradually swallowing Fei Yuchen's back, one of them suddenly shouted. This pillar, what is your name? Soon, the extremely confident voice penetrated the darkness and responded. Tendao Fei Yuchen. The three swordsmen bowed in the direction where Fei Yuchen disappeared, and they shouted in unison. Tendao, I wish you good luck in martial arts. The only lower rank in the entire Demon Slayer Corps can do it. The pillars are respected, but their strength is only one aspect. What ordinary swordsmen admire is that they always rush to the most dangerous front line. The cold moonlight is like a sharp arrow, shooting at Fei Yuchen through the gap in the woods. Suddenly, two black bamboo poles like pythons shattered the moonlight and strangled Fei Yuchen at a speed invisible to the naked eye. In an instant, the blazing fire illuminated the entire forest, and the arm of the second lower string gibbon broke into two pieces. Fei Yuchen immediately changed direction, and saw a red-gold arc under his feet. The next moment, a red-gold meteor passed through the earth. After the rolling thunder, the gibbon with shaking eyes rushed out of the woods. The sneak attack failed. It realized that the one who came this time was a pillar-level swordsman of the Demon Slayer Corps. The gibbon stretched out its black arms, and in a blink of an eye, its hands grasped the cliff. It stared at the woods calmly and spoke nonsense. Demon Slayer Corps pillar, I'm waiting for you at the top of the mountain. Do you think you can kill me? Who knew that as soon as it finished speaking, a unicorn formed by lightning broke through the air, and the unicorn was Fei Yuchen. Unfortunately, the gibbon retracted its arms and bounced itself up like an elevator. Fei Yuchen crashed into the mountain, and after a loud bang, he walked out of the dust and looked up. It was probably a cliff more than 30 meters high. Oh my god! Is this guy Spider-Man? Chapter 56. Along the rugged mountain road, wooden stakes stained with dried blood were inserted into the rocks. These stakes were exactly a whole tree with both ends cut off. The strong smell of blood enveloped the area. Fei Yuchen walked up the mountain road. The surrounding scenery was only a moment, but the stench lingered for a long time. The smell was disgusting, like a corpse that had been rotting for several days. Suddenly, a person's head flashed in his peripheral vision. He stopped abruptly and stopped in front of a wooden stake. Looking at the miserable scene in front of him, his blood pressure soared and his eyes were red. I saw a head nailed to the top of the wooden stake by a sun-wheel sword. Although the owner of the head was unrecognizable, his identity could be recognized from the sword. It was the swordsman of the Demon Slayer Corps who came to investigate not long ago. Damn, bastard! Fei Yuchen cursed loudly, he clenched his fists, his nails even sank into the flesh. At this moment, he was extremely angry, his chest seemed to have erupted like a volcano. That damned ghost actually killed his comrades in arms like this. He continued to move forward along the mountain road, with only anger in his eyes. Every few steps, he could always see a head nailed to a wooden stake. The closer to the top of the mountain, the more serious the decay of the head, and the swordsman's original appearance could not be seen at all. His anger continued to deepen, but he remained calm, but his murderous intent became stronger. Fei Yuchen had never been so angry before, as he had died in the battle and his corpse had to be insulted like this. He counted and found that there were only 16 heads, excluding the 3 who survived at the foot of the mountain, and there was one less person. Could there be any survivors? He rushed to the top of the mountain with doubts, and what came into view was a wooden tower several meters high. On the side of the wooden tower facing the intersection, a boy wearing the uniform of the Demon Slayer Corps was hung. It was none other than Murata who had scolded Xia. He was not dead, after all. Xia wanted to see him die in despair. Mr. Shin, it's you. Murata raised his bloody head, and his hoarse voice was full of hope, because it was Toma Shin who came, the strongest person in their class. His head was bald, and all his hair was pulled out by Xia. His uniform was stained with blood. It was obvious that he had suffered inhuman torture. Even so, Murata was still not afraid of death, and scolded Xia for a whole day. Looking at Murata's miserable appearance, Toma Shin was furious and searched for the figure of Xiaxian viciously. Asshole! Where are you hiding? You'd better not let me find you, or I'll cut you into pieces. Seeing that the lower rank had not appeared, Fei Yuchen wanted to save Murata first, but just as he was about to move, a sharp finger pressed against Murata's throat. If he moved a little, Murata would be dead. On the wooden tower covered by moonlight, a monkey-like figure appeared. It was the gibbon. The reason why Fei Yuchen didn't find it was all thanks to its blood demon art, wood hiding. As long as it doesn't attack actively, it will hide in the trees. This is also the reason why it built a wooden tower on the top of the mountain to create a battlefield that is beneficial to itself. Human, go and die. Aren't you afraid of death? When facing death, you are humble, desperate, and afraid. In order to survive, you can do anything. Humans are creatures that are afraid of death. The gibbon is high above, it looks down at Fei Yuzhen, with only contempt in its eyes. At this moment, it thought it was a god, because it controlled the lives of the people under the tower. Pillar, put down your knife, or I will kill this guy immediately. As soon as it finished speaking, Murata shouted with his last strength. Mr. Zhen, leave me alone. Kill him and avenge everyone. Shut up. The gibbon slapped Murata unconscious, and it had begun to indulge in the drama it had arranged. If the pillar put down the knife, it would destroy his hope in front of this human. If the pillar did not put down the knife, it would immediately kill the human in front of it. Presumably, the pillar also saw the surprise it had prepared for him. Seeing his comrade's head nailed to the stake, he must have been furious. When he thought of being able to torture a pillar who wanted to kill him but couldn't, the gibbon's pleasure multiplied. After all, no matter how fast the pillar was, it could not be faster than himself with the hostage in his hand. I'll give you 3 seconds to think. 1. 3. Time's up. Fei Yuzhen's hands kept shaking, as if he had Parkinson's disease. He pretended to be very nervous, but he stared at the gibbon intently and said firmly. Don't kill him, I'll let him go. Looking at the other party's humble appearance, the playfulness in the gibbon's eyes deepened a bit, and he felt very happy. Fei Yuzhen bent down, and the moment the knife slipped out of his hand, he suddenly stared at Xia Er and yelled in fear behind him shouted. Muzan Kibutsuji, you, why are you here? Muzan Kibutsuji, this name is a taboo name for ghosts, coupled with Toma's realistic acting, the gibbon was stunned. It really thought that the boss was here. Just when the other party was distracted for a moment, Toma tightly grasped the knife in his hand, and his eyes became firm. The ground under his feet suddenly cracked, as if it could not bear his powerful force. With a loud bang, Toma rushed to the wooden tower in front at an astonishing speed like a cannonball that had just been fired. It happened so suddenly that the gibbon didn't react at all. Looking at the top of the mountain from the night sky, Toma looked like a ball of red gold flame moving at high speed, and the long flame tail split the entire mountain top in two. With a bang, the wooden tower was torn into pieces, and the gibbon holding Murata's arm disappeared, and the ghost fell from the top of the tower overlooking everything. Until it happened, it felt like it was dreaming. How dare this guy? The hostage is still in my hands, who gave him the confidence? How did this bastard know the name of the adults? The gibbon was confused, why didn't things go according to his own script? Fei Yuzhen hurriedly gave Murata a bottle of Save Your Life 3000, and then quickly placed him in the bushes on the top of the mountain, and then turned and walked towards Xia Er. The panic and fear on his face were swept away, and he turned to the same playfulness as the gibbon. He laughed in the other's tone. I tell you, I want to save people, but you want to die. Have you thought about how many pieces you want to break into? I decided to let you experience the long-lost sun. The gibbon stood among the scattered broken wood, staring at Fei Yuzhen in anger, and yelled. Liar, you liar! You shameless human, how dare you use adults to deceive me? It pulled its hair like crazy, and its egg-sized eyes were about to pop out. Fei Yuzhen smiled slightly, stretched out his voice, and said in a mean tone. I am shameless. What can you do to me? Hit me, come and hit me. He provoked the gibbon crazily, and the other party was like a powder keg, about to explode. He was actually played by a human. Chapter 57. The gibbon's arms stretched out quickly, and it waved its arms, and a strong wind blew between its arms. As it moved, the broken wood around began to shake violently. In the blink of an eye, the broken wood flew into the sky and scattered all over the mountain top, forming a maze-like battle formation. The blood demon art of wood hiding was activated, and it took advantage of the situation to hide in one of the broken woods, waiting for an opportunity to move. Fei Yuzhen looked around, there were at least hundreds of wooden stakes. This family's blood demon art was very sneaky, and even its breath could be hidden. No wonder it was not found at the beginning. It was useless to talk trash now, after all, it had been used once, so he needed to wait for the second to expose himself. As expected, the gibbon could not hold back, and two sharp claws rushed from behind Fei Yuzhen. He turned around and chopped down with a knife, and the strong blade wind cut off his arm and the wooden stake together. The gibbon was forced to show up. At the same time, red gold arcs burst out from Fei Yuzhen's feet like flames, and an angry thunder unicorn bit it. When the sun wheel sword shining with lightning passed through the air and accurately cut off the gibbon's neck, a pair of black arms like steel whips quietly attacked from behind Fei Yuzhen again. Not only behind him, but also on both sides. These arms carried unparalleled power and speed, as if they could tear the void, making the surrounding air crackle. The gibbon has a total of 3 blood demon arts, namely Wood Hidden, Long Arms and Clone. It uses one clone as bait, and the other 2 clones interfere with the enemy's judgment, and finally it will give a fatal blow. This is its calculation. Obviously, Fei Yuzhen fell into its trap. But the scene that the gibbon imagined of the enemy being torn into pieces did not happen. Only a yellowish-brown black tortoise enveloped Fei Yuzhen's body, and all his arms were bounced off. Breath of Tao Mountain form black tortoise. At the moment of slashing the clone, Fei Yuzhen changed his sword skills, which was completely an instinctive reaction. After all, if there is a bait, there must be a killer move. He jumped up using the wooden stake as a stepping stone and instantly locked onto the wooden stake where the gibbon's body was. Breath of Tao Fire form Sozaku. In the blink of an eye, Sozaku flapped its wings, and countless blazing blade winds turned into wings and pierced the wooden stake. As Fei Yuzhen came to the back of the wooden stake, a column of blood spurted out from the wooden stake, and then half of the body fell to the ground. Because he could not see the target clearly, he only cut off a quarter of Xia Er's body. With Xia Er's recovery ability, I am afraid that the other half of the body has grown back, and it has definitely moved. In a direct confrontation, Xia Er couldn't take a few moves from Fei Yuzhen, but in terms of surviving, Fei Yuzhen would find it difficult to kill Xia Er in a short time. He met the most surviving guy among the lower rank, and he was speechless that even such a guy could be promoted to the rank of Xia Er. The gibbon was hiding in a wooden stake at the edge, and it didn't dare to breathe. It was a trap set by itself, but it almost lost its life. How strong is this human in front of him, and how much strength has he hidden? He can't be the strongest pillar of the Demon Slayer Corps, right? Just to deal with a demon like him, he wouldn't send out the strongest combat force. The gibbon couldn't help but doubt the life of the demon. Fei Yuzhen's knife just now almost left a psychological shadow on it, and now it will definitely not act rashly, so it decisively adopts the clone consumption method. The next will be a protracted battle. But as soon as the clone attacks, it will be chopped to death, and it can be said that it will be killed in seconds if it shows its head. If the gibbon had not engraved the ghost blood mark on these wooden stakes in advance, it might not even have the chance to use the blood ghost technique. Seeing that the gibbon had not shown up, Fei Yuzhen planned to force it to show up. He began to run around the entire mountain, and his speed was getting faster and faster. A layer of emerald green fighting spirit lingered behind Fei Yuzhen, and his speed was so fast that dozens of afterimages surrounded all the wooden stakes. From a distance, dozens of emerald green figures condensed into a Fei Lian beast with a bird's head and a deer's body, and Fei Lian created a hurricane around the top of the mountain. In an instant, the top of the mountain was howling, and many wooden stakes were swept into the air and crushed by the hurricane. This is the Tao breathing wind form Fei Lian developed from the breathing of wind. As the hurricane dissipated, only less than 10 of the 100 wooden stakes remained. Fei Yuzhen held the sun wheel sword in one hand, panting and standing between the remaining wooden stakes. He was exhausted, and his hand holding the sword was shaking. At this moment, the gibbon controlled the clone to attack. It wanted to see whether this human was really tired or just pretending. As it saw, Fei Yuzhen barely avoided the attack, and there were 2 more wounds on his body. He had to work hard to cut off the attacking arm. Still hiding in the corner, the gibbon in Luli raised his mouth. He was very strong but not smart enough. He even wanted to use brute force to force himself to show up. Ridiculous, really ridiculous. It began to laugh at Fei Yuzhen. Now was the time to give him a fatal blow. Take advantage of his weakness to kill him. So, the gibbon showed up, but the clone, its original body, was still hiding, because it needed to confirm again whether Fei Yuzhen was playing itself. The clone quickly attacked Fei Yuzhen. After 5 minutes of pulling, he killed the clone. Ha ha ha. Finally succeeded in killing it. He showed a relieved smile, and the gibbon was waiting for this moment, the moment when the enemy relaxed his vigilance. The next moment, 4 gibbons strangled Fei Yuzhen together. After 2 attempts, the gibbon finally dared to show up among the 3 clones. Although the feeling was very weak, there was still a difference between the main body and the clone, and the smile on Fei Yuchen's mouth suddenly changed. From a sense of relief to the pride of a successful evil plan. From the launch of Fei Lian to now, Fei Yuchen has actually only used 50% of his strength. The gibbon is very timid, at least among the rank of the 12 demon moons, it is the most timid and cautious, and even the battle must be in the venue prepared in advance. Facing a pillar that has exhausted most of its strength, it only took action personally after 2 attempts. But unfortunately, it met the most acting swordsman in the entire Demon Slayer Corps, Tiandao Fei Yuchen. Unfortunately, by the time it discovered it, it was too late. In an instant, thunder rumbled on the top of the Zemo mountain, and the red-gold lightning illuminated the night sky. Fei Yuchen went straight to the main body, and after a few cuts, blood gushed out, and the gibbon was cut into pieces. He did what he said. The main body was severely damaged, and the clones disappeared without even touching Fei Yuchen. You bastard! Despicable, shameless villain! You lied to me again! The gibbon screamed heartbreakingly, and it regretted it. It should have tried again. Its body parts began to move closer to its head, trying to return to normal, but Fei Yuchen would not give it this chance. He kicked up a wooden stake, and after a few cuts, the sharp stake nailed the gibbon's head. Soon, 8 sharpened stakes nailed all its body parts. These 2 people are more cowardly than each other. Only the more cowardly one can win. This is Fei Yuchen, with flexible fighting methods. After all, if you can't beat him, just join him. Chapter 58. A bright moon hung high in the sky, and the white moonlight fell on the Zemo mountain like a veil, illuminating the entire mountaintop. The arms, legs, and head, the body was divided into 3 parts, nailed by 8 sharpened wooden stakes. These body organs were scattered between the 10 wooden stakes, and it was the gibbon that was nailed to death. Its egg-sized eyes flashed with a cunning and strange red light, and it had a hidden trick. Because it knew that the person in front of it would not kill it immediately, he said that he would let the sun burn him to death. Despicable human, give me a quick death. An evil ghost who enjoyed killing people actually cursed the ghost hunters for being despicable, which was really ridiculous. I won't. Fei Yuchen rolled his eyes at he reached into his arms, and then took out a tube of wisteria poison, which came with a syringe. The 10th version of wisteria poison is highly toxic to ghosts, and this is the most miserable way to die. Sunbathing, it deserves it. When thinking of those swordsmen who died tragically, Fei Yuchen was furious. It was too easy for him to cut off Xia Er's neck with a knife. Fei Yuchen smiled, but it was a fake smile. The gibbon's current perspective was only as high as its head. From its perspective, the smile was very creepy. This guy is a despicable devil. Just staring at Fei Yuchen and smiling, it couldn't help but shiver. You're going to kill me. Okay. Fei Yuchen tilted his head and stabbed the syringe into its head, injecting some into each part, and then let it wait to die. This version of the wisteria flower poison is enough to poison a lower string, not to mention a lower string that has consumed a lot of physical strength. Only the upper string can quickly decompose the toxin. After a while, all the black hair on the gibbon fell off and turned into dust. Under its skin, there were thin and long purple bulges visible to the naked eye. It was the poison of the wisteria flower that was eroding its body. Ah! Kill me, give me a quick death. Damn, human! The gibbon let out a sharp and miserable cry, and the narrow sound tore the tranquility of the entire forest. With this scream, the gibbon's body parts trembled violently, and the wisteria flower poison tortured it in pain. Blood slid down its cheeks, intertwined with the inhumane scream, and its swollen face was hideous and terrifying. Suddenly, it laughed, a laugh of success, an undisguised smirk. Human, die with me! Ha ha ha! Along with its shouting, its only clone hidden in the stake started to move. The reason why it was nailed to the ground was that the clone took away 30% of its power. This is its killer move, specially designed for Fei Yuchen who is off guard. From the moment of the fight, it felt that it could not kill the pillar in front of it with its own strength. Although the gibbon did not want to use this move, it did not care now. It was enough to kill Fei Yuchen. The clone, which gathered 20% of its strength, rushed towards Fei Yuchen at lightning speed. Its arms were put together, as short as a dagger, but the corresponding hardness was greatly improved. Seeing that the clone was about to kill the guy in front of it who made it hate it, the gibbon showed a hideous and complacent smile. I admit that you are very strong, and the kind that is extremely strong. That's right, so what? You will still die in my hands. Ha 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 ha. The next moment, the clone pierced the gibbon's own head, and Fei Yuzhen flashed to the side with the knife in his hand, with an indifferent smile on his face. Ah! Ah! How is it possible? It's impossible to dodge. Impossible. The gibbon's voice was long, hoarse, and collapsed. Its pierced head was gushing with purple-red blood, and it was howling like crazy. Fei Yuzhen looked at the disappearing clone, he spread his hands helplessly, and imitated the tone of the gibbon at the beginning to sneer. In the face of absolute strength, all strategies are useless. You are a weakling. Lower Moon too. Maybe you don't deserve this position. If I don't kill you, Muzan Kibutsuji will also destroy you. The last sentence of Fei Yuzhen is the most poisonous, more poisonous than the poison of wisteria flowers. After all, the gibbon tried his best to get into Muzan's sight and get more blood. There is no greater sorrow than the death of the heart. For those swordsmen who were slaughtered by him, this is the most satisfying result. It will not only die, but also die painfully. Fei Yuzhen sighed, because those dead swordsmen will never come back. He said to the woods beside him, Renzi, let Yin deal with the scene, and take everyone back. Fei Yuzhen carried Murata to the mountain after the three swordsmen at the foot of the mountain handed him over to the three swordsmen at the foot of the mountain. He followed the Yin team up the mountain to help. The news of killing the Lower Moon too was brought back to the headquarters by the Holy Blade. He sat alone on the trail halfway up the mountain, eating a large bag of food brought by Yin. Because of decay, the heads of those team members could only be buried on the spot, and the only relics that could be brought back were the sun wheel swords. Mr. Tiandao, are you okay? Sato Yunyi walked out of the bushes nearby, and he found that Fei Yuzhen's expression was not right. Since they met in the last final selection, Yunyi led the team to deal with the scene after Fei Yuzhen's battle. The two became familiar with each other. It's okay, you have worked hard. Fei Yuzhen said with a smile, he just mourned for the sacrificed swordsman. That's good. I'll go up there and take a look. Maybe there are still some missing places. We must let the souls of the swordsmen go home. He had just taken a few steps when Fei Yuzhen tried to stop him. After all, the lower string too was nailed to the top of the mountain and it was not dead yet. I'll go. It's not safe up there. Before Yin Ye could speak, Fei Yuzhen had disappeared in front of him. The top of the Zemo mountain. Under the light of the full moon, the gibbon was left with only a trace of breath. The rest of its body was only blood, and its head was rotten beyond recognition. It talked to itself like a madman. Do you know why I chose Zemo Mountain? Because there is a seal here, a seal set by an adult, a forgotten seal. Damn human, if I die, you can't live well. There is an even more terrifying ghost. Ha ha ha. As soon as it finished speaking, it heard a bang and its head exploded automatically. Finally, a pool of liquid mixed with the blood of the lower string spread out. The mountain trembled slightly, and the liquid was absorbed by the earth bit by bit. As the liquid continued to decrease, and the last drop was swallowed, the ground on the top of the mountain began to slowly crack, and the cracks became more and more. Soon, these cracks formed a huge eye pattern. A dark red light shot out from it, and then a large amount of dark red gas overflowed from the eye like a powerful torrent. These dark red gases filled the entire mountain top, covering everything around. In the blood mist, a dry arm stretched out from the ground. Chapter 59. Fei Yuzhen looked up at the top of the mountain. The blood-red light column that shot up into the sky startled him. At this moment, a strong breath spread down the mountain road from the top of the mountain. This breath was like a ferocious beast, coming with a terrifying pressure. In an instant, his hair stood on end, and it was an instinctive reaction. The guy on the mountain could definitely threaten his life. This was the first conclusion Fei Yuzhen came to. This world is indeed the world of Demon Slayer, but he didn't know the variables. Obviously, the changes on the Slant Eye Mountain were the unknown. The only people in this world who could bring him a sense of oppression now were Muzan Kibutsuji and the upper ranks. There is no doubt that the guy on the top of the mountain is at least at the upper rank. He took a deep breath, held the sword tightly in his hand, and prepared to meet the guy on the top of the mountain. When Fei Yuzhen climbed to the top of the mountain, a half-mummy growing in the ground came into view. The scene was like a half-pulled radish that lacked water. The corpse closed his eyes tightly, but a faint heartbeat could be heard, which at least showed that the other party was still alive. Perhaps he sensed Fei Yuzhen's breath, and the eyelids that had not been raised for a long time trembled, and fine dust fell, and the corpse was about to open his eyes. At that moment, Fei Yuzhen felt that the blood in his body was about to coagulate. He underestimated the strength of this guy. This sense of oppression was definitely not weaker than the first 3 upper strings. He no longer hesitated, and the red-gold thunder surged from his feet. The electric arc as thick as a small snake climbed up along the sun wheel sword. The breath of Tao. The form of thunder. The Kirin. Looking down from the air, I saw the surging electric light roaring and raging, submerging the entire mountaintop in a dazzling light. The red-gold light illuminated the night sky, and the originally dark mountaintop was now illuminated, turning into a stage that seemed to be made of lightning. The trees and rocks covered by lightning were like actors dancing on the stage, their figures twisted and deformed in the lightning. Fei Yuzhen did not hold back in this attack, he used all his strength, causing the terrain to change. There was a loud bang, deafening, and the top of the mountain was instantly covered by dust, a grey scene. As a gust of wind blew, 2 figures appeared in the dust. The mummy took Fei Yuzhen's full-strength knife with his hands, and similarly, its shriveled arm was in danger of falling apart. But its eyes opened, they were a pair of eyes full of highlights, the dark red pupils were like 2 full moons, murderous. These should not be the eyes of a mummy. Fei Yuzhen was stunned, and now he was extremely sure that this half-mummy was definitely the upper string of the 12 demon moons, and it was a very strong one. After all, no one knew how many years it had been buried underground. Realizing that something was wrong, he quickly distanced himself, and the arm of the mummy collapsed and turned into dust. Its cracked lips opened and closed slightly, and there was a gleam of admiration in its eyes, saying, "Boy, you are very talented, and you are the strongest person I have ever seen. Are you interested in being my subordinate? I don't think Muzan will refuse." Now it was Fei Yu's turn to be confused. Just now, this guy called the name of the trash boss directly. Damn! Sigma! Why didn't it die from the curse? Mystery surged in his mind. This was different from the setting that Fei Yu knew. I'm not interested. I will only be the enemy of the ghost. After a brief shock, he decisively rejected the other party's proposal. Oh! The mummy nodded nonchalantly. It just hoped that it would not force it. Besides, it might not be able to kill the young man in front of it after just waking up, otherwise it could coerce him with force. But now the most they can do is to lose both sides, which is why it appreciates the other party. The knife just now was stronger than any human it had seen, and judging from his age, this kid was not very old, which also meant that he still had room to grow. By the way, how many years has it been peaceful now? The mummy asked. Anyway, there was someone in front of him, so he could ask more information he needed. Hearing this, Fei Yuzhen was shocked, because the era the mummy was talking about was exactly the era when Muzan had just become a demon, and no wonder he said that he was the most talented human. After all, there was no legend called Tsugakoku Yoriichi in that era, because he was not born yet. Could this guy be a human who was turned into a demon by Muzan in that era? It's been nearly 1,000 years since the era you know. Fei Yuzhen answered truthfully. The other party wanted to know something, and so did he. At present, it seems that the mummy has no intention of continuing to attack. As soon as he finished speaking, the mummy's eyes dimmed for a moment, and then sighed and murmured. Has it been so long? Who are you? Fei Yuzhen took the opportunity to ask. Of course, he didn't think the other party could answer him. Me? You can call me the initial upper string. The mummy said, it should be called this. After all, this is what I proposed to Muzan. After so long, I don't know if it has adopted this name. It muttered to itself, and the short words contained explosive news. Fei Yuzhen couldn't help swallowing his saliva. Initial upper string, are you kidding? Suddenly, a small earthquake occurred on the top of the mountain. At the same time, the mummy's shriveled body was plump. It completely absorbed the ghost blood of the gibbon, and the pressure was strengthened again. It was seen that it supported the ground with one hand, and then pulled itself out of the crack. The warrior clothes on the mummy turned into dust and fell off. There were hard bumps on its body that were not as big as eyeballs, but because of lack of water, the wrinkles were only skin. It swayed without even glancing at Fei Yuzhen, and in the blink of an eye, only a blurry afterimage was left. Not good. Fei Yuzhen, who came to his senses, hurriedly turned around and chased down the mountain, but the Yin team was still there. Halfway up the mountain, Yin Ye collapsed on the ground, and next to him were the equally frightened team members. The mummy held a Yin team member in one hand, and without saying a word, bit his neck, and bright red blood flowed down. In a flash, the team member turned into a mummy. After sucking all the blood of a person, its skin color regained some redness, a hard lump on its chest slowly opened, and a dark red eye emitted a cold light. It threw the body away like garbage, and its big hand, which had regained some blood color, grabbed Yin Yat. Just as it was about to succeed, a huge figure fell from the sky and entangled it with lightning speed. It was a blue dragon, its body winding and circling, its scales as hard as steel flashing with cold light. The blue dragon head hung high in the sky, Fei Yuzhen was in the dragon head, and the blade wind smashed down like a tide. Breathing of Tao. Water form. Walking dragon. The arm of the mummy flew out, it turned around and kicked him away, and taught him an unhappily. Boy, it is very rude to disturb others' meal. Chapter 60. The mummy ignored Fei Yuzhen and turned to grab the members of the hidden team. It still admired the talent of this young man. After all, it was rare to meet a human who could fight, but its patience was limited. You can't kill me now, can you? Fei Yuzhen stood up and said provocatively. Even if he was an upper-rank celestial being buried underground for nearly 1,000 years, his strength was greatly reduced. He bet that the other party could not kill him. Of course, his guess was not wrong. On the one hand, it did not take action because it admired Fei Yuzhen's talent, and on the other hand, it was because it could not kill him. But before it became a ghost, it was a martial artist who respected strength. In its eyes, Fei Yuzhen was just talented but not absolutely powerful. Those words and that tone just now made it feel that its dignity was insulted. Boy, you are too ignorant of the world, right? The mummy gave up eating and turned to defend its dignity as a martial artist. Seeing this, Fei Yuzhen hurriedly winked at the hidden team. Even though they were about to die, the members of the hidden team still held tightly to the relics of the swordsman. They were just weak in strength, but their will was no weaker than any of their comrades who rushed to the front line. The mummy let those ordinary people escape. It only wanted to fight Fei Yuzhen now, and nothing else mattered. It took a stance, and its body instantly shrank a lot, as if something was sucking its blood. Sure enough, the dormant eyeballs on its chest began to wriggle, and 20 dark red pupils opened at the same time. At the same time, its breath rose again. Warrior, Beimu. It solemnly introduced itself. This was the respect for martial arts engraved in its bones, and it would not change no matter what it became. Beimu and Akaza were somewhat similar. They were both people who pursued the ultimate in martial arts, but their starting points were different. Akaza's essence was to protect his wife, but Muzan erased his memory, causing him to only know how to become stronger. Beimu became stronger not for anyone, but for martial arts. For this reason, it even dared to challenge Muzan. The belief in becoming stronger even made it break free from Muzan's control. Although Muzan could suppress it, he could not kill it. In desperation, he had to seal it. Swordsman, Tiandao Feiuchen. Feiuchen still stared at Beimu with hostility, but his eyes were sincere. This was the response of a fellow martial artist. After all, he saw a different kind of purity in the other's eyes, which was different from other ghosts, and it deserved this response. However, as long as innocent lives were harmed, purity was useless, and he would not hesitate to chop. The battle was about to start. Who knew that Beimu's eyes suddenly closed, and it bowed deeply to Feiuchen, which confused him. What the hell? Muzan wants to see me, it's rushing here, you go. Feiuchen. What should I say? You ghost are pretty good. This is Beimu's personality. The only prey it likes is its own. Even if the boss comes, it will be useless, not to mention that he is no longer the boss. After telling it, it squeezed out a serious expression on its withered face, and said with murderous intent. Tiandao Feiuchen, next time we meet, I will kill you in my prime. You are the first person I met when I woke up. You should be glad that you are very talented. Wait for me to kill you. Since Feiuchen said that provocative word, Beimu no longer called himself an old man. It regarded him as a real opponent. After saying that, it turned around and jumped off the cliff because it was faster to travel. The competition ended before it even started, and it ended so hastily. Has personality. After a pause, Feiuchen slowly spoke. This was the first time he saw a guy who reported the location of his boss to the enemy. It can be seen that Beimu is an honest ghost. It said that Muzan is coming, so he must be coming. Under the moonlight, Beimu was like a fuel car, moving rapidly in the mountains. Soon, it came to the other side of Zemu Mountain. In the endless darkness, two figures stood quietly. The breath emanating from them seemed to be able to suppress the whole world. This terrifying pressure was as heavy as a mountain, making it impossible to breathe. Under this pressure, Beimu's body was full of cracks, like a porcelain doll that was about to break. Regardless of the body, there was only unyielding in its eyes. It dared to come, which meant it was not afraid. Beimu, do you know your mistake? Wuzen's cold voice sounded. It was only surprised by the awakening of this super rebellious guy. It thought that this guy had died in the ground a long time ago. Who knew that this guy would not fulfill the ghost's wish? Beimu was still alive and gathered together to be known by the gibbon. The location of the seal. Muzen, do you want to kill me? You couldn't do it 1,000 years ago, and you can't do it 1,000 years later. Beimu went up and fought hard, not caring about those trivial things. How dare you? A shout came from the darkness, and then a huge crescent-shaped blade wind broke through the air. Wherever the blade wind passed, the air made a mournful sound, which showed the strength of the person who made the move. Facing such a perverted attack, Beimu was not afraid but laughed. Anyway, the blood he had just consumed was not used up. 20 dark red eyes emitted a weird halo in the darkness, and a huge vertical pupil emerged from under its feet. In an instant, its body was sucked dry, only a little thicker than a bamboo pole. This almost drained all of Beimu's blood. In less than a breath, its arm that was originally cut off by Feiyuzhen was restored to its original state. Two arms as thin as paper slapped the oncoming blade wind, and with a bang, the blade wind turned into fragments and scattered. Hyakum laughed like a drunkard, and said excitedly. Very strong, I like it. The era after 1,000 years is really interesting. Another powerful swordsman. Ha ha ha. The next moment, dozens of crescent-shaped blade winds flew towards Hyakum like a storm, accompanied by Kokushibo's extremely unhappy questioning. What, called, again? It was obvious that Hyakum actually put himself on the same level with that unknown person. That was something that Kokushibo, who pursued the ultimate, could not tolerate. Seeing that the blade wind was about to engulf Hyakum, Muzen, who was wearing a suit, suddenly stood in front of it, and 9 pipe whips pierced through the suit and swept away, breaking all the blade winds. Hyakum, you are still the same. I really want to kill you. Muzen did not hide his disgust at all. He also wanted to kill Hyakum, but he could not do it because Hyakum was the same as him. He would also self-destruct to save his life. If he had not challenged Muzen, Muzen would never have been able to find him, let alone seal him. Boss Ya's dislike for Hyakum far exceeded that for Doma. One of them was not afraid of death and death was not a threat at all. The other could not die no matter how he tried to kill himself. This was the story of the biggest traitor in Boss Ya's ultimate creature Blue Bian Hua Search Co., Limited, an honest guy. Hyakum.